Daily life for most Maya people revolve around family, local trade, seasonal festivals, and agricultural routine. They worship gods of rain, sun, maize, earth, death, and creation. Ritual objects filled homes, clay figurines, incense burners, grinding stones, woven mats, and simple altars. Even ordinary people believe their actions contributed to cosmic balance. Religious festivals involved music, dancing, feasting, and performance, displaying strong communal unity. Yet the same religion also demanded blood sacrifice. Workers pricked their skin, nobles offered deeper wounds, and at times, captured enemies were killed for divine balance. For centuries, this system worked. But beneath the cultural brilliance lay tension. Kings competed for territory and prestige, building monuments at a faster rate to honor ancestors and legitimize their rule. Nobles demanded resources to maintain elite lifestyles, placing greater burdens on common people. Farmers cleared more land, stressing the environment. Cities grew larger and closer together, increasing competition. Everything that made Maya civilization powerful, religion, hierarchy, expansion, population growth, architectural ambition, slowly became a source of vulnerability. By understanding this social foundation, the collapse becomes less mysterious. The system was magnificent but rigid, prosperous but demanding. Over time, stresses accumulated until the structure could no longer support its own weight. The Maya were not doomed by ignorance or primitiveness, but by the same forces that challenge societies today: inequality, resource strain, political rivalry, and environmental change. If we want to understand how the Maya civilization eventually collapsed, we must also look at their intellectual achievements, because these cultural strengths shaped their identity, worldview, and eventually their response to crisis. Military skill was reinforced through participation in ceremonies, ball games, and ritualized contests, linking martial competence to social and religious legitimacy. Alliances and diplomacy were central to post-classic military strategy. Northern cities often formed coalitions to secure trade routes, defend against rival polities, and maintain political influence. Diplomatic marriages, shared ceremonial participation, and ritual alliances created flexible and adaptive networks of power. Such alliances could shift rapidly in response to environmental pressures, resource scarcity, or political disputes, demonstrating a pragmatic approach to regional stability. Military cooperation was thus closely linked to economic control, resource distribution, and civic legitimacy. Offensive campaigns were highly strategic. Raids were designed to secure resources, capture labor or ritual participants, and assert dominance over rival settlements. Unlike southern capitals, where warfare sometimes led to citywide destruction, northern campaigns were targeted, minimizing urban disruption while reinforcing political authority. Captured prisoners were incorporated into ritual practices, servitude, or elite households, linking military success directly to civic and religious legitimacy. Archaeological evidence, including weapon caches, burned outposts, and fortified settlements, illustrates the tactical precision and planning of Northern Postclassic warfare. Control over trade and economic infrastructure was closely connected to military power. Fortified marketplaces, checkpoints, and monitored causeways ensured safe movement of essential commodities such as salt, jade, obsidian, copper, textiles, and ritual paraphernalia. Cities that lost control of trade routes risked economic disruption, reduced legitimacy, and vulnerability to rival forces. Military planning, therefore, extended beyond battlefield tactics to include the protection of resources, infrastructure, and the economic lifeblood of urban centers. Ritual and ceremonial practices reinforced military authority. Public festivals, Ball games and sacrificial ceremonies often commemorated military victories and legitimized elite leadership. Warriors played prominent roles in these rituals, connecting martial prowess with cosmological sanction. Ceremonial architecture, including pyramids, plazas, and platforms, serve both as ritual stages and observation points for military coordination. This dual function illustrates how warfare, ritual, and civic planning were integrated into a coherent system of governance and urban management. Education and training in military knowledge were closely intertwined with broader intellectual life. Young men learned weaponry, strategy, and leadership alongside astronomical observation, mathematics, and ritual practice. Apprenticeships with experienced warriors ensured the transmission of tactical knowledge, while participation in urban labor and ceremonial activities reinforced civic responsibility. This holistic approach to education produced a professionalized warrior class capable of defending cities, maintaining order, and supporting the continuity of cultural and political traditions. In conclusion, Northern Postclassic Maya military strategy was multidimensional, combining professionalized forces, strategic fortifications, alliances, economic control, and ritual legitimacy. Warfare was not merely destructive. It was an instrument of governance, resource protection, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. Northern cities adapted to environmental and demographic pressures by integrating military preparedness into urban planning, civic management, and ritual life, ensuring that Northern Maya society could thrive despite regional instability and the legacy of Southern collapse. The social, economic, and political consequences of warfare in Northern Postclassic Maya cities were profound and far-reaching. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán relied on military organization not only for defense, but also to maintain economic control, political authority, and cultural cohesion. Warfare shaped urban design, labor allocation, trade networks, and ritual practices, ensuring that cities could sustain large populations, integrate southern migrants, and maintain continuity with cultural and intellectual traditions from the southern lowlands. Military activity was thus an instrument of both survival and social stability, embedded deeply within the post-classic northern urban landscape. Fortified architecture was central to both defensive and symbolic purposes. Northern cities utilized multiple layers of walls, terraces, and elevated observation points to secure key neighborhoods, ceremonial plazas, and marketplaces. Sakbiab, stone causeways connecting urban centers, ceremonial complexes, and agricultural zones, were monitored and fortified to prevent enemy incursion. Observation towers overlooking cenotes, trade routes, and agricultural lands enabled early detection of threats and coordinated response. Fortifications not only provided physical security, but also served as visual reminders of political authority and martial readiness, reinforcing elite legitimacy and civic identity. The organization of military forces was highly structured. Professional warrior classes were trained in weapon use, tactical deployment, and leadership. Hierarchically organized units allowed for coordinated defense and strategic offensive campaigns. Young men were educated in martial skills, often alongside training in astronomy, mathematics, ritual observance, and civic responsibility, producing a class of warriors who were simultaneously practical, intellectual, and ceremonial actors. Elite warriors, captains, and ceremonial officers formed the backbone of these military systems, ensuring that cities were capable of defending themselves while projecting influence regionally. Alliances were a critical component of post-classic military strategy. Cities formed coalitions to control trade routes, secure agricultural lands, and reinforce political authority. Diplomatic marriages, shared ceremonial obligations, and joint defense arrangements strengthened these alliances. Networks were fluid, allowing cities to adapt quickly to environmental pressures, resource scarcity, and shifting political circumstances. Cooperation between cities ensured that trade and resource flows remained secure, while regional alliances provided collective security against hostile polities. Military strategy was therefore inseparable from diplomacy, economic planning, and ritual observance. Offensive campaigns were deliberately targeted. Northern cities conducted raids to secure agricultural resources, capture labor or ritual participants, or assert dominance over rival settlements. Unlike the destructive campaigns associated with the collapse of southern cities, northern warfare was precise and strategic, minimizing disruption to urban centers while maximizing political and economic gains. Captured prisoners were often incorporated into ritual practice or elite households, linking military success directly to civic and religious legitimacy. Archaeological evidence, including weapon caches, burned outposts, and fortified neighborhoods, illustrates the tactical sophistication of Northern Postclassic military operations. Economic control was closely intertwined with military strategy. Northern cities monitored and protected marketplaces, trade corridors, and production centers. Essential commodities such as salt, jade, obsidian, copper, textiles, and ritual paraphernalia were distributed under elite supervision, ensuring social cohesion and reinforcing political legitimacy. Hybrid rituals emerged, blending southern dynastic traditions with northern cosmology and Toltec influences. Artifacts such as imported pottery, ceremonial figurines, and iconographic motifs reflect this cultural synthesis, illustrating that northern religion evolved dynamically in response to population movement, environmental pressure, and political innovation. Religious education was another critical component of social continuity. Children were trained in ritual performance, calendrical calculation, astronomical observation, and ceremonial etiquette. Apprenticeship with priests, shamans, and elder community members ensured the transmission of sacred knowledge, sustaining intellectual and spiritual traditions despite the collapse of southern institutions. Literacy and knowledge of ceremonial glyphs continued in simplified forms on ceramics and codices, enabling elites and selected practitioners to preserve cosmological understanding while engaging with wider community rituals. Economic and ritual life were closely intertwined. Markets often coincided with ceremonial events, integrating trade, feasting, and ritual into a cohesive social system. Artisans produced both functional and ceremonial goods, reinforcing the connection between material culture and spiritual practice. Offerings, crafted objects, and ritual artifacts circulated within markets and neighborhoods, ensuring that religious life permeated daily survival and economic activity. This integration strengthened social cohesion, facilitated the inclusion of southern migrants, and reinforced collective identity. In summary, religion and ritual in post-classic northern Maya cities were essential mechanisms for survival, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. Public and household ceremonies, sacrificial practices, astronomical observation, water sanctification, and ritualized marketplaces all contributed to a resilient urban culture. By embedding spirituality into everyday life, northern Maya cities maintained cohesion and identity in a period of migration, environmental challenge, and political realignment. Religion was not merely a set of beliefs. It was a practical framework for managing resources, legitimizing authority, and sustaining community across generations. Northern post-classic Maya religious life was also characterized by innovation, adaptation, and integration of diverse cultural influences. Following the collapse of southern capitals, cities like Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, and Mayapán became destinations for migrants carrying southern ritual knowledge, southern-style architecture, and dynastic ceremonial traditions. These migrants introduced a wealth of spiritual expertise, which northern elites and communities adapted to fit local environmental conditions, political realities, and social structures. This process of religious integration allowed northern Maya cities to maintain continuity while evolving new ritual forms that reflected a hybrid cultural identity. The role of sacred spaces extended beyond temples and pyramids to include plazas, ball courts, and natural landscapes. Plazas functioned as the focal points for communal rituals, festivals, and civic gatherings. Ball courts, prominent in northern cities, were more than athletic spaces. They were ritual theaters representing cosmic conflict, mythological narratives, and social hierarchy. Murals and carvings in these spaces depicted deities, warriors, and ceremonial scenes, reinforcing the intersection of religion, politics, and social life. Public participation in rituals legitimized elite authority while creating a sense of shared identity and collective spiritual experience. Cenotes and water sources maintained their dual role as sacred and practical sites. Offerings in cenotes range from pottery and jade to figurines and occasionally human remains, reflecting the belief that these waters connected humans to the underworld. Water management was essential for survival, particularly in the arid northern regions. Reservoirs, cisterns, and canals not only provided irrigation and drinking water, but were also imbued with ritual significance. Priests performed ceremonies to sanctify water infrastructure, integrating environmental stewardship with spiritual obligation. Religious oversight of water resources reinforced authority, maintained public order, and ensured agricultural productivity. Sacrifice, both human and symbolic, continued to hold a central place in northern ritual practice. Captives from warfare or ritual contests were offered to deities such as Kukulkan or Chak. Sacrificial ceremonies were conducted with precise calendrical timing, often coinciding with astronomical observations or agricultural cycles. The practice symbolized the restoration of cosmic balance, legitimized elite authority, and reinforced communal cohesion. Archaeological evidence of sacrificial caches, ceremonial knives, and burial practices illustrates the formalized and socially significant nature of these rites. Sacrifice was therefore not only a spiritual act, but also a political and social tool that integrated multiple levels of society. Astronomical observation remained central to ritual and spiritual practice. Priests and astronomers calculated the Tsokin and Hab calendars, timing ceremonies, agricultural work, and civic events to align with celestial cycles. Venus, the sun, moon, and stars were observed to predict eclipses, solstices, and equinoxes, which in turn informed ceremonial timing. Temple architecture, including pyramid staircases, colonnaded halls, and roof combs, was aligned with celestial events, allowing buildings themselves to serve as instruments of religious and scientific observation. This integration of astronomy and ritual reinforced elite authority, ensured environmental coordination, and connected ordinary citizens to cosmic cycles. Ritual knowledge was transmitted through apprenticeship and oral tradition. Children learned ceremonial procedures, astronomical observation, and calendrical calculation from priests, elders, and family members. Even as monumental inscriptions decreased, knowledge persisted in household altars, murals, codices, and ritual paraphernalia. The transfer of religious and scientific expertise ensured that post-classic Maya cities retained intellectual continuity, connecting the new northern centers to southern traditions while allowing for regional adaptation. Migration profoundly shaped northern religious practice. Southern refugees brought traditions associated with dynastic kingship, monumental architecture, and celestial observation. These southern elements were blended with northern innovations, including Toltec-influenced iconography and architectural styles. Ceremonial integration was not merely symbolic. It reinforced social cohesion by creating a shared spiritual framework for diverse populations. Hybrid practices reflected continuity with the past while accommodating the practical realities of northern geography and political structure. Household ritual was critical for sustaining spiritual continuity at the family level. Domestic altars featured offerings to ancestors, deities, and spirits of the natural environment. Household ceremonies provided psychological and spiritual support, linked individual and family survival to cosmic cycles, and maintained intergenerational knowledge. The combination of public and private ritual ensured that religious practice permeated all levels of society, from elite rulers and priests to common farmers and artisans. Ritual also influenced civic and economic life. Festivals coincided with market activity, redistribution of goods, and public labor projects. Artisans, traders, and farmers contributed to ceremonies by producing offerings, decorative objects, and ritual paraphernalia. Ceremonial events reinforced social hierarchy, legitimized political authority, and integrated economic, military, and spiritual systems into a cohesive framework. Religion was thus inseparable from the organization of society, providing a structural and symbolic backbone that enabled northern Maya cities to survive and thrive despite the collapse of southern centers. In conclusion, religion and ritual in post-classic northern Maya cities represented a dynamic and integrative system that sustained social cohesion, cultural identity, and political legitimacy. Public ceremonies, household rituals, sacrificial practices, astronomical observation, and the sanctification of natural resources reinforced the interconnectedness of cosmic, social, and environmental order. By blending southern traditions with northern innovations, post-classic Maya communities maintained cultural continuity while adapting to new challenges, demonstrating that spiritual life was both practical and central to urban survival, identity, and resilience. Post-classic northern Maya cities were not only centers of political power, ritual practice, and social life. They were vibrant hubs of artistic and architectural innovation. After the collapse of the southern lowlands, northern cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, and Mayapán preserved the artistic heritage of the classic period while incorporating new forms and stylistic elements. These urban centers became laboratories for cultural expression, reflecting the integration of southern traditions, northern environmental adaptations, and influences from distant regions, including the Toltec culture of central Mexico. Understanding post-classic art and architecture provides insight into how Maya society preserved identity, reinforced authority, and maintained social cohesion in the aftermath of regional collapse. One of the most striking features of post-classic architecture was the integration of astronomical knowledge into building design. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichén Itzá is a prime example. Its staircases align with the sun during equinoxes, creating the illusion of a serpent descending the pyramid. This precise astronomical alignment demonstrates that architects combined ritual, political, and scientific knowledge in their designs. Similarly, other temples, palaces, and ceremonial complexes were aligned with solar, lunar, and planetary events, emphasizing the inseparable connection between cosmic observation, religion, and public display. Northern architects adapted southern techniques, such as corbel vaulting, to local conditions, using refined stonework to construct durable and aesthetically striking structures. The Pyuk architectural style, exemplified in Uxmal and Cobá, reflects a distinctive combination of technical mastery and decorative innovation. Buildings feature smooth limestone walls juxtaposed with intricate mosaic facades adorned with geometric patterns. masks of the rain god Chak, and symbolic motifs representing fertility and abundance. Columns, corbelled vaults, and decorative friezes illustrate both the technical skill of masons and the symbolic sophistication of artisans. Archaeological surveys indicate that residential and ceremonial buildings were carefully arranged to enhance both visual impact and functional coherence, integrating living, ritual, and civic spaces within a single urban plan. Ceremonial architecture also emphasized communal identity and political legitimacy. Large plazas provided space for public gatherings, marketplaces, ball games, and festivals. Colonnaded halls, elevated platforms, and pyramidal temples served both religious and civic functions. Murals and stone reliefs depicted deities, warrior elites, and mythological narratives, reinforcing social hierarchy and integrating civic pride with spiritual observance. The blending of symbolic, functional, and aesthetic considerations demonstrates that Northern Maya architecture was deeply intertwined with cultural and political life. Artistic expression extended beyond monumental architecture to include ceramics, sculpture, textiles, and mural painting. Ceramics range from utilitarian storage jars to intricately painted ritual vessels, often decorated with iconography reflecting both northern and southern influences. Pottery workshops specialized in different styles, producing items for household use, trade, and ceremonial purposes. Sculpture, including stone figurines and relief carvings, depicted deities, animals, and mythological scenes, blending aesthetic, symbolic, and ritual significance. Textile production was equally sophisticated, with cotton fabrics dyed, embroidered, and woven into ceremonial and trade goods, reflecting both economic and cultural value. Murals in northern cities reveal the fusion of artistic traditions and social commentary. Painted scenes depict ritual ceremonies, ball games, warfare, and cosmological motifs. These works conveyed narratives of divine sanction, civic authority, and historical memory, integrating aesthetic, political, and religious messaging. In some cases, murals incorporated Southern motifs, including depictions of Southern rulers, ceremonial attire, or glyphic references, reflecting the migration of knowledge and cultural continuity. At the same time, Northern innovations appear in stylistic simplifications, geometric patterns, and Toltec-inspired iconography, demonstrating adaptation and regional identity. Urban design reinforced both aesthetic and practical priorities. Sakbiab, elevated stone causeways, connected neighborhoods, temples, and trade centers, allowing movement of goods, people, and ceremonial processions. Neighborhoods were organized to facilitate community participation in religious and civic life, while maintaining defensive and environmental efficiency. Residential compounds integrated functional living spaces, household altars, and small ceremonial platforms, linking domestic life with spiritual and social identity. The spatial arrangement of buildings reflected a conscious integration of urban, ritual, and political priorities, ensuring that daily life reinforced the larger cultural and civic order. Trade and artistic production were deeply intertwined. Northern cities produced luxury goods such as jade ornaments, copper bells, ceremonial pottery, and elaborately decorated textiles, which were traded regionally and even across distant networks. Artisans contributed to both economic sustainability and cultural continuity, producing works that reinforced identity, communicated status, and facilitated diplomatic or military alliances. Artistic production thus functioned as both material and symbolic infrastructure, supporting political authority, social cohesion, and economic vitality simultaneously. The integration of Southern migrant knowledge was a key feature of post-classic art and architecture. Southern artisans brought masonry techniques, mural painting styles, and glyphic literacy that influenced northern artistic production. This cultural synthesis allowed northern cities to preserve a sense of continuity while adapting to local environmental, political, and social conditions. The result was an era of artistic and architectural innovation that maintained Maya identity while reflecting new regional realities. In summary, art and architecture in northern post-classic Maya cities were central to political authority, religious life, social cohesion, and economic stability. Astronomically aligned pyramids, intricate puke facades, ceremonial plazas, murals, sculptures, and textiles all reinforced interconnected social, ritual, and civic systems. Post-classic innovation demonstrates the resilience and creativity of Maya civilization, showing that cultural expression persisted, evolved, and flourished even after the collapse of southern capitals. The cultural expression of northern post-classic Maya cities extended beyond monumental architecture to encompass daily life, civic engagement, and ceremonial performance. Art and architecture were not merely decorative. They served as vehicles for political authority, spiritual communication, and social cohesion. In cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, and Mayapán, every urban element, from public plazas to domestic compounds, was designed to reflect the integration of ritual, governance, and community identity. This comprehensive approach ensured that cultural expression was both visible and functional, supporting the resilience of Maya society in the wake of southern collapse. Public plazas functioned as stages for communal gatherings, religious festivals, and civic announcements. They were often flanked by pyramidal temples, colonnaded halls, and ceremonial platforms, creating spaces where aesthetic, ritual, and political dimensions converged. Ball courts, a hallmark of northern Maya cities, served not only as athletic arenas, but also as symbolic theaters. Games often reenacted cosmological narratives, depicting the struggle between life and death, order and chaos. Victory in the ball game could legitimize elite authority, while the ceremonial context reinforced social hierarchy and civic cohesion. Murals, reliefs, and decorative motifs within these plazas conveyed messages of divine sanction, historical continuity, and cultural identity, embedding art directly into public life. Residential architecture also reflected cultural priorities. Households were designed for both functionality and ritual observance. Many included hearths, storage pits, and domestic altars for offerings to ancestors and deities. Fortifications along trade routes, as well as military oversight of marketplaces and urban entry points, ensured that cities could defend their economic lifelines while maintaining authority over both local and migrant populations. Ritual and ceremonial life reinforced military authority. Public festivals, ball games, and sacrificial ceremonies commemorated victories, legitimized leadership, and reinforced social hierarchy. Warriors played key roles in these rituals, linking martial skill to spiritual sanction. Ceremonial architecture served dual purposes. It provided spaces for public ritual and observation points for military coordination. The integration of warfare and ritual ensured that military power was socially sanctioned and culturally embedded, reinforcing the perception that the city's authority was both political and divinely sanctioned. Education and military knowledge was comprehensive and integrated. Young men trained under experienced warriors in strategy, leadership, and weaponry, while also participating in civic labor, ritual practice, and economic management. Tactical knowledge was passed through apprenticeships, mentorship, and experiential learning. Military training was closely linked to social and ritual education, ensuring that warriors understood their role in protecting urban stability, maintaining economic flow, and reinforcing social and political norms. This holistic approach to military education created a professional and culturally integrated warrior class capable of sustaining northern cities in times of conflict and uncertainty. In conclusion, warfare in northern post-classic Maya cities was multidimensional and deeply integrated into civic, economic, and ritual life. Military strategy ensured the protection of urban centers, trade routes, and agricultural resources, while also reinforcing social hierarchy, political authority, and cultural continuity. Neighborhoods were often organized into clusters, facilitating communal labor, cooperative defense, and social interaction. Artisans worked within these neighborhoods to produce pottery, textiles, and small ritual objects, embedding cultural expression into daily routines. Even common households participated in the artistic life of the city, reflecting a democratization of cultural practice in the post-classic period. Ceremonial architecture demonstrated a sophisticated integration of symbolism, functionality, and scientific knowledge. The Pyramid of Kukulkan exemplifies this synthesis. Its staircases align with solar events during the equinox, creating the illusion of a serpent descending the pyramid. The precision of this architectural design required knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and religious symbolism, illustrating how the Maya merged scientific understanding with aesthetic and ritual imperatives. Similarly, the nunnery, quadrangle, and temple of the magician at Uxmal reveal architectural mastery combined with iconographic complexity, integrating celestial symbolism, political authority, and regional artistic innovation. Sculptural and decorative arts flourished in the post-classic period, reflecting both continuity and innovation. Carved stone facades, stucco reliefs, and decorative friezes featured masks of deities, geometric motifs, and symbolic representations of cosmic order. Murals depicted ceremonial life, military conquest, and cosmological events, often blending Southern artistic traditions with Northern adaptations. Imported Southern styles, combined with Toltec-influenced iconography, created hybrid visual languages that communicated political power, religious legitimacy, and communal identity. Ceramics were similarly expressive, ranging from utilitarian forms to highly decorated ritual vessels. Potters employed iconography and symbolism that reinforced religious narratives, social hierarchy, and historical memory. Textile production and adornment were integral to cultural expression. Cotton weaving, embroidery, and dyeing were performed by skilled artisans who produced both ceremonial attire and trade goods. Textiles conveyed social status, ritual participation, and identity, while also facilitating trade networks that connected northern cities to coastal and interior regions. Luxury goods, including jade ornaments, copper bells, and ceremonial paraphernalia, reflected elite authority while maintaining a visual language of power and religious connection throughout the urban landscape. Integration of Southern knowledge was critical to post-classic artistic and architectural achievements. Migrants from Tikal, Köpen, and other southern capitals brought expertise in masonry, mural painting, glyphic literacy, and ceremonial design. Northern architects and artisans adapted these techniques to local conditions, creating urban forms that were functional, aesthetically striking, and ritualistically precise. This process demonstrates cultural resilience, showing that post-classic Maya cities maintained continuity with their southern heritage while innovating in response to environmental and social challenges. Urban planning in northern cities reflected an understanding of both aesthetics and functionality. Sakbiab, elevated stone roads, connected neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, and marketplaces facilitating movement, trade, and ritual processions. Neighborhoods were designed to integrate domestic, ceremonial, and communal spaces, ensuring that daily life was intertwined with cultural expression. Defensive planning, water management, and ritual architecture were coordinated within these urban designs, illustrating the multidimensional role of architecture in sustaining social order, spiritual observance, and political authority. Art and architecture also reinforce community identity and memory. Public murals, carved stele, and ceremonial spaces commemorated victories, migrations, and significant civic events. Iconography combined historical memory with religious narrative, reinforcing both social hierarchy and shared cosmology. Artistic production functioned as a tangible link between generations, preserving memory, tradition, and identity in a period of migration, environmental stress, and political adaptation. In conclusion, post-classic Northern Maya cities exemplified an integration of art, architecture, and cultural expression that reinforced political authority, ritual observance, and social cohesion. Through pyramids, plazas, ball courts, murals, sculpture, textiles, and residential design, these cities maintained a rich cultural life that connected everyday survival to ceremonial grandeur. Artistic and architectural innovation was both adaptive and preservative, ensuring continuity with Southern traditions while addressing the unique social, political, and environmental challenges of the Northern Maya landscape. The culmination of art, architecture, and cultural expression in Northern post-classic Maya cities highlights how these elements were not only aesthetic, but also functional, symbolic, and socially integrative. In cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, and Mayapán, artistic and architectural production reflected a conscious effort to maintain cultural identity, reinforce political authority, and provide cohesion for a diverse population, including migrants from southern regions. Art and architecture served as tangible manifestations of religious belief, civic organization, and intellectual continuity, illustrating how Northern Maya society adapted creatively after the collapse of southern capitals. Public monuments were central to this integration. Pyramidal temples, colonnaded halls, ceremonial platforms, and ball courts were carefully designed to balance ritual, social, and political functions. For example, the Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichén Itzá combined precise astronomical alignment with dramatic visual impact and ritual significance. The staircases, shadow serpent phenomenon during the equinox, and placement within the city's sacred geography reflect the seamless integration of science, ritual, and political symbolism. Similarly, the nunnery quadrangle at Uxmal and the Temple of the Magician demonstrate architectural innovation that incorporated both Southern Maya traditions and Northern stylistic developments, including Toltec influences. These structures reinforced elite authority while fostering civic engagement and communal identity. Artistic production extended into sculpture, murals, ceramics, and textiles. Stone carvings and reliefs depicted mythological narratives, historical events, and ceremonial life, serving as public records of both spiritual and political achievements. Murals illustrated sacred stories, ball games, ritual sacrifices, and celestial phenomena, visually linking the community to cosmic cycles. Ceramics included both utilitarian and ceremonial forms. Painted vessels often carried iconography that reinforced ritual practices and social hierarchy. Textiles, particularly cotton garments adorned with intricate embroidery, symbolized status, spiritual affiliation, and participation in civic rituals, while also functioning as trade goods across regional networks. The synergy of these artistic forms created a culturally cohesive environment where aesthetic, social, and spiritual life were inseparable. The integration of Southern migrant traditions with Northern innovations was a defining feature of post-classic artistic culture. Southern artisans brought expertise in masonry, glyphic writing, mural painting, and ceremonial design, which Northern cities adapted to local resources, climate, and social structures. This blending is evident in architectural detailing, iconographic motifs, and stylistic variations that combine Southern precision with Northern creative expression. The adaptation of these traditions demonstrates resilience and continuity, showing that Northern cities preserve key elements of Maya identity while embracing regional adaptation and innovation. Urban planning reinforced both aesthetic and functional priorities. Sakbiab, the elevated stone causeways, connected neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, and marketplaces, enabling processional rituals, trade, and communication. Neighborhoods integrated residential, ceremonial, and communal spaces, facilitating cooperation and surveillance while maintaining access to water, food storage, and craft production areas. Fortified structures, elevated observation points, and strategic neighborhood layouts illustrate the integration of defense, aesthetics, and civic functionality. This planning allowed northern cities to sustain large populations, accommodate migrants, and maintain cultural cohesion while preparing for potential conflicts. Markets and workshops were vital sites of cultural production. Artisans produced ritual vessels, jewelry, textiles, and ceremonial paraphernalia, linking economic activity to spiritual and social life. Markets facilitated not only trade, but also cultural exchange, providing venues for the dissemination of artistic styles, techniques, and religious symbolism. Southern migrants contributed knowledge and skills, integrating their practices into northern economies, which reinforced social networks and maintained continuity of artistic traditions. Luxury goods, including jade, obsidian, and copper ornaments, were both symbolic and practical, supporting social hierarchy, trade, and ritual performance. Residential architecture also expressed cultural values. Homes incorporated household altars, hearths, and storage pits, blending domestic, ritual, and functional space. Neighborhood arrangements emphasize cooperation, social cohesion, and access to water and ceremonial centers. Household craft production, including pottery and weaving, ensured both economic sustainability and continuity of cultural knowledge. The aesthetic and symbolic aspects of residential spaces reinforced identity, transmitting tradition through daily practice and visual language. Post-classic Northern Maya cities demonstrate that art and architecture were dynamic and integrative, serving multiple roles simultaneously. Monumental structures communicated political legitimacy and ritual authority, while smaller-scale art and domestic architecture reinforced communal identity and intergenerational knowledge. Urban planning, ceremonial alignment, and craft production were coordinated to support survival, cultural memory, and adaptation. Artistic innovation reflected both continuity with Southern traditions and responses to new environmental, political, and social contexts, illustrating the resilience and creativity of Northern Maya civilization. In conclusion, the art, architecture, and cultural expression of Northern Postclassic Maya cities were essential mechanisms for sustaining identity, reinforcing authority, and integrating diverse populations. Through monumental pyramids, Puke-style facades, ball courts, murals, ceramics, textiles, and residential design, Northern cities preserve the intellectual, spiritual, and aesthetic legacy of the Maya while adapting to post-collapse realities. Art and architecture were not mere embellishments. They were active tools for survival, cohesion, and resilience, demonstrating that culture remained a central pillar of Northern Maya society long after the decline of Southern capitals. Trade, economy, and resource management were central to the survival and prosperity of Northern Postclassic Maya cities. Following the collapse of Southern capitals, cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán became hubs of commerce, innovation, and resource distribution. The northern environment, characterized by dry conditions, limited arable land, and reliance on cenotes, necessitated sophisticated economic and resource strategies. Trade networks, urban planning, agricultural adaptation, and artisanal production were all intricately linked, creating an integrated system that ensured urban survival, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. Understanding post-classic economic structures provides insight into how the Maya maintained resilience in a period of regional migration, environmental stress, and political reorganization. Northern cities relied on a combination of local production and long-distance trade to meet the needs of urban populations. Agriculture, while fundamental, could not fully sustain the dense urban populations of Chichén Itzá, or Uxmal. Farmers practiced advanced techniques such as terrace farming, raised fields, and polyculture, growing maize, beans, squash, chili, ramon nuts, cassava, and wild fruits to maximize yield and soil fertility. Cenotes and constructed cisterns provided reliable water for irrigation and household use, while reservoirs buffered communities against drought. Agricultural production was coordinated with ritual calendars to ensure planting and harvesting aligned with cosmic cycles, linking economic management with spiritual observance and reinforcing community cohesion. Trade was essential to urban sustainability. Northern cities controlled regional exchange networks, connecting interior production areas with coastal and Caribbean ports. Salt, textiles, cacao, obsidian, jade, copper bells, and marine shells were major trade commodities. Marketplaces within the cities facilitated both local and regional exchange, acting as centers of commerce, social interaction, and cultural transmission. Traders and artisans were integrated into civic and ritual structures, providing essential goods for ceremonies while sustaining economic activity. Imported luxury items enhanced social hierarchy, reinforced elite authority, and strengthened regional influence. The Sac-Biab elevated stone causeways connecting neighborhoods, temples, and surrounding settlements were critical for economic organization. These causeways facilitated the movement of goods, labor, and ceremonial processions, linking urban and rural areas into cohesive networks. Fortified checkpoints along key trade routes ensured security, protecting both commercial and ritual traffic. The integration of infrastructure, trade, and defense illustrates the Northern Maya approach to combining practicality, security, and symbolic authority in resource management. Artisan production was a key component of the post-classic economy. Skilled craftspeople produced pottery, textiles, stone carvings, ceremonial figurines, jewelry, and metal objects for both local consumption and trade. Pottery workshops generated functional storage vessels, ceremonial bowls, and ritual paraphernalia, often decorated with iconography that communicated religious, social, and political messages. Textile production involved cotton weaving, dyeing, and embroidery, creating garments for ritual use, trade, and daily life. Artisans' contributions were essential for maintaining urban prosperity, facilitating commerce, and preserving cultural identity. Resource management extended beyond agriculture and trade to include water, forests, and minerals. Cenotes provided a stable water supply, essential for drinking, ritual, and agriculture. Forests were carefully managed for firewood, construction materials, food, and medicinal plants. Obsidian and jade were mined and traded strategically, while copper was imported for ritual and decorative purposes. Management of these resources required knowledge of local ecosystems, labor coordination, and distribution systems, integrating environmental science with economic and ritual priorities. Markets were not only economic centers, but also social and cultural spaces. Merchants exchanged goods, disseminated ideas, and reinforced social networks. Market activity was often coordinated with ritual festivals, linking commerce, religious observance, and civic life. Standardized weights, storage facilities, and organizational structures suggest sophisticated regulation and oversight, ensuring fairness, continuity, and urban stability. Traders facilitated the integration of southern migrants into northern economic and social networks, reinforcing cultural continuity while maintaining urban functionality. Economic adaptation was crucial to resilience. The northern environment was drier and less fertile than the southern lowlands, requiring cities to maximize efficiency and diversification. Crop rotation, terracing, raised fields, polyculture, and strategic use of cenotes all contributed to sustainable agricultural output. Trade networks supplied commodities that could not be locally produced, including jade, obsidian, and copper. Economic strategies were closely tied to ritual calendars, reinforcing the interdependence of commerce, spiritual observance, and community organization. Military and political power were also tied to resource management. Control over trade routes, marketplaces, and agricultural production strengthened elite authority and maintained urban stability. Alliances with neighboring cities secured access to scarce commodities, while fortifications protected resources from raiding or environmental disruption. Resource allocation, trade oversight, and market regulation were essential elements of governance, illustrating the integration of economic, political, and social management in northern post-classic Maya cities. In conclusion, trade, economy, and resource management were foundational to the survival and prosperity of northern post-classic Maya cities. Sophisticated agriculture, water and forest management, artisan production, strategic trade networks, and market regulation created a resilient urban system capable of sustaining large populations, integrating migrants, and preserving cultural identity. By linking economic activity with ritual practice, governance, and social cohesion, northern Maya cities maintained continuity and flourished despite environmental, political, and demographic challenges. Northern post-classic Maya cities developed highly sophisticated economic and trade networks that enabled them to sustain large urban populations and maintain political and social stability long after the collapse of southern capitals. These networks combined local production, regional exchange, and long-distance trade, reflecting an integrated approach to resource management that was adaptive, resilient, and deeply embedded in social and ritual life. Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán serve as prime examples of how the northern Maya structure their economies to meet the demands of urbanization, migration, and environmental constraints. Agriculture remained the foundation of northern Maya economic life, but it was adapted to the drier conditions and variable rainfall of the northern lowlands. Farmers practiced terrace farming, polyculture, and intercropping to maximize productivity and maintain soil fertility. Maize continued to be the central crop, supplemented by beans, squash, chili peppers, ramon nuts, cassava, and wild fruits. Raised fields and carefully designed irrigation systems allowed for effective water retention and protection against seasonal droughts. Northern cities balanced defensive preparedness with strategic offensive campaigns, forming alliances, regulating markets, and incorporating ritual and ceremonial observance into their military systems. The integration of strategy, diplomacy, and ritual allowed northern post-classic Maya cities to thrive in a period of environmental stress, population migration, and regional competition, demonstrating their resilience, adaptability, and sophistication. Agriculture and water management were the foundations of northern post-classic Maya civilization, essential for sustaining dense urban populations, supporting trade networks, and maintaining social cohesion. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán were located in the arid northern lowlands, where rainfall was seasonal and soil fertility limited. These environmental constraints demanded innovative strategies for food production, water storage, and landscape management. Agricultural techniques, combined with ritual oversight and urban planning, ensured that northern cities could survive and thrive despite challenging ecological conditions, population growth, and the demands of trade and ceremonial life. Northern Postclassic Maya agriculture relied on a combination of traditional techniques inherited from the southern lowlands and locally adapted innovations. Terrace farming was widely implemented to maximize arable land on hillsides, prevent soil erosion, and increase water retention. Raised fields were constructed in low-lying areas to manage seasonal flooding and improve soil fertility. Polycropping systems, including maize, beans, squash, chili, ramon nuts, and cassava, were carefully managed to maintain soil health and ensure dietary diversity. Crop selection and rotation were timed according to the Tzolk'in and Hav calendars, integrating astronomical observation with agricultural decision-making and reinforcing the link between ritual, ecological understanding, and practical sustenance. Cenotes and artificial reservoirs provided reliable water sources, and their maintenance was closely linked to ritual and administrative oversight, demonstrating the interdependence of spiritual practice, governance, and resource management. Markets played a pivotal role in Northern Maya economic organization. Marketplaces within city plazas functioned as sites for the exchange of agricultural surplus, artisanal products, luxury items, and imported commodities. Standardized measures, weights, and designated market spaces ensured orderly trade and facilitated the integration of diverse urban populations, including southern migrants who brought specialized skills and goods. Artisans produced pottery, textiles, jewelry, ceremonial paraphernalia, and tools for both local use and export. The circulation of goods and markets was intertwined with ritual activities, including festivals, religious observances, and public ceremonies, linking economic exchange to social cohesion and cultural continuity. Long-distance trade was essential for the acquisition of scarce and prestigious materials. Northern cities exchanged goods such as obsidian from highland Guatemala, jade from southern sources, copper from Veracruz, salt from coastal deposits, and marine shells from the Caribbean. Control over trade routes conferred economic, political, and symbolic authority, allowing northern elites to maintain influence within a region. Archaeological evidence, including imported artifacts, standardized weights, and fortified checkpoints along Sac-Biab, indicates that trade was carefully regulated, both to ensure resource security and to reinforce the social hierarchy. Artisanal production was central to the economic, social, and ritual life of northern Maya cities. Pottery workshops produced both functional and ceremonial vessels, often decorated with iconography linking economic, spiritual, and political domains. Textiles, including cotton garments and ceremonial fabrics, communicated status, facilitated trade, and reinforced ritual participation. Stone carving and sculpture reinforced civic and religious identity, commemorating victories, migrations, and significant ceremonial events. The work of artisans linked material production directly to the cultural, political, and spiritual vitality of northern cities, ensuring that economic labor supported broader social and religious structures. Resource management extended beyond agriculture and trade to include control over water, forests, and mineral resources. Cenotes were sacred as well as practical, serving as sources of water for consumption, irrigation, and ritual purposes. Forested areas were utilized for firewood, construction materials, medicinal plants, and food sources. Obsidian and jade were quarried and traded strategically, while copper was imported and used for ceremonial objects, bells, and decorative items. Effective management of these resources required knowledge of local ecosystems, coordinated labor, and complex social oversight, demonstrating that environmental stewardship was a critical aspect of urban governance. Trade and economic strategies were closely intertwined with political authority. Control over markets, Trade routes and resource-rich territories allowed rulers and councils to assert dominance, maintain social order, and integrate migrants into urban life. Alliances with neighboring cities secured access to critical goods, while military and defensive infrastructure protected key trade hubs. Economic success reinforced political legitimacy, while failures in resource management or trade could undermine elite authority. The interconnectedness of commerce, governance, and military readiness illustrates the integrated nature of post-classic Northern Maya urban life. Northern Maya cities also adapted to seasonal fluctuations and environmental stress through strategic storage and redistribution of resources. Granaries, storage pits, and reservoirs were carefully maintained to buffer against drought, crop failure, or population surges. Centralized oversight ensured equitable distribution for ceremonial events, urban labor demands, and elite households. Markets and ceremonial exchanges redistributed goods, fostering social cohesion and preventing economic collapse. By combining careful production, trade regulation, and ritualized distribution, Northern Maya cities created resilient systems capable of supporting large populations and diverse communities. In conclusion, trade, economy, and resource management were fundamental to the survival, stability, and prosperity of northern post-classic Maya cities. Sophisticated agricultural practices, integrated water management, artisanal production, local and long-distance trade, and carefully organized marketplaces allowed urban populations to thrive despite environmental challenges and political instability. The Northern Maya combined practical management with ritual observance and political oversight, creating an adaptive and resilient economic system that preserved cultural identity and supported urban life for centuries after the Southern collapse. The post-classic Northern Maya cities demonstrate a sophisticated integration of trade, economy, and resource management, reflecting a level of urban planning and social organization that allowed these centers to flourish long after the southern capitals fell. Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán functioned as nodes within extensive regional and long-distance networks, linking agricultural production, artisanal manufacturing, and strategic commerce with political authority and ritual observance. Understanding how these economic systems operated provides insight into the resilience, adaptability, and cultural continuity of Northern Maya civilization. Central to the Northern Maya economy was the management of agricultural production. Although the northern lowlands presented more challenging environmental conditions than the southern lowlands, drier climate, thinner soils, and seasonal rainfall, innovative farming techniques ensured reliable food supplies. Farmers implemented raised fields, terracing, and polyculture, cultivating maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, ramon nuts, and cassava in ways that maximized yield while maintaining soil fertility. Cenotes and artificial reservoirs provided water for irrigation and household use, and maintenance of these resources was closely tied to ritual practice and administrative oversight. Agricultural productivity was therefore a socially coordinated and spiritually sanctioned process, illustrating the integration of economic and cultural priorities. Trade networks were highly developed, connecting Northern Maya cities to both inland and coastal regions. Northern centers controlled the flow of goods, such as obsidian from highland Guatemala, jade from the southern lowlands, copper from central Mexico, salt from coastal regions, and marine shells from the Caribbean. Marketplaces within cities were organized for efficient distribution, featuring standardized measures, designated stall spaces, and regulated oversight. These markets served as hubs for social interaction, cultural exchange, and economic coordination. Merchants, artisans, and farmers participated in a tightly connected system, ensuring both the circulation of goods and the integration of migrants into the urban fabric. Artisanal production was closely linked to economic strategy. Potters produced functional storage vessels, ceremonial bowls, and decorated ritual items. Textiles, woven and embroidered from cotton, were essential for both local use and trade, symbolizing social status, ritual affiliation, and economic wealth. Stone carvings and sculptures reflected religious narratives, historical memory, and political authority. Copper bells, jade ornaments, and other luxury items reinforced social hierarchy and facilitated diplomatic and trade relationships. Artisans played a central role in sustaining both material and cultural economies, highlighting the interdependence of creativity, commerce, and ritual in northern cities. Resource management extended beyond agriculture and trade. Northern cities carefully managed water, forests, and mineral resources to ensure urban sustainability. Cenotes and reservoirs provided critical water supplies, while forests supplied timber, medicinal plants, and food. Obsidian and jade were extracted and distributed strategically, while copper was imported to supplement local material culture. Labor for resource management was coordinated by civic and ritual authorities, reflecting a system in which social organization, environmental stewardship, and economic planning were deeply intertwined. Effective resource management also reinforced political legitimacy, as elites were responsible for maintaining infrastructure, regulating distribution, and ensuring ceremonial and ritual obligations were met. Markets were critical not only for economic exchange, but also for social integration and cultural continuity. Market days coincided with festivals, ritual ceremonies, and public events, linking trade with religious observance. Standardized practices ensured equitable exchange and reinforced community norms. Southern migrants who arrived after the collapse contributed skills, goods, and knowledge, integrating their expertise into the economic and social life of northern cities. Through these networks, northern cities maintained cohesion, preserved tradition, and fostered resilience. Economic adaptation was essential for mitigating environmental and social stress. Northern cities diversified production, regulated trade, and coordinated storage systems to buffer against seasonal variation or scarcity. Granaries, storage pits, and water reservoirs functioned as safety nets, enabling northern centers to absorb fluctuations in population, agriculture, and resource availability. Coordinated labor, centralized oversight, and ritualized resource management strengthened social cohesion and ensured urban survival. Military and political structures were intertwined with economic control. Control of trade routes, marketplaces, and critical resources allowed ruling elites and councils to assert authority, maintain social stability, and reinforce civic cohesion. Alliances with neighboring cities secured access to essential commodities and mitigated threats to resource supply. Fortified checkpoints, guard towers, and monitored causeways protected trade and ensured stability within urban centers. Economic management, political authority, and military preparedness thus formed a tightly integrated system that sustained northern Maya cities for centuries. In conclusion, the trade, economy, and resource management of northern post-classic Maya cities were sophisticated, highly coordinated, and deeply integrated with ritual, political, and social structures. Advanced agricultural practices, controlled water and forest resources, artisanal production, regulated marketplaces, and long-distance trade networks ensured the survival and prosperity of northern centers. These systems allowed northern cities to accommodate large populations, integrate migrants, maintain cultural continuity, and adapt to environmental and political challenges, demonstrating the resilience and ingenuity of post-classic Maya civilization. Education, knowledge transmission, and intellectual traditions were fundamental to the survival, adaptation, and resilience of northern post-classic Maya cities. After the collapse of southern capitals, northern centers such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán became repositories of accumulated knowledge, while simultaneously fostering innovation to meet new environmental, social, and political challenges. Knowledge encompassed practical skills, ritual expertise, astronomical observation, mathematics, history, and artistic practice. The transmission of these intellectual traditions ensured continuity of Maya culture, facilitated social cohesion, and enabled cities to thrive in the northern lowlands despite ecological constraints and demographic upheaval. Education in post-classic northern Maya cities was multifaceted, encompassing both formal and informal systems. While elite households and priestly classes retained specialized knowledge, much learning occurred through apprenticeship, household instruction, and participation in ritual or economic activities. Children learned agricultural techniques, craft production, ritual observances, and civic duties from parents, elders, and mentors within the community. Literacy and numeracy, though concentrated among scribes and ritual specialists, were disseminated orally and through practical application. Teaching was closely tied to everyday life, ensuring that knowledge remained relevant, transferable, and adaptable to changing conditions. Astronomy and calendrical systems formed the core of intellectual practice. Priests, astronomers, and ritual specialists calculated the Tzolk'in and Hob calendars to determine agricultural cycles, ritual dates, and civic events. Observations of the sun, moon, planets, and stars guided ceremonial scheduling, urban planning, and even military strategy. Temples and pyramids were aligned with celestial events, providing both functional observatories and symbolic reinforcement of cosmological order. The study of Venus, eclipses, and solstices informed decision-making across multiple domains, integrating practical observation with spiritual and civic authority. Astronomy in northern cities was both scientific and ritualistic, demonstrating the inseparability of intellectual knowledge from social and religious practice. Mathematics was also central to post-classic education. The Maya number system, including the use of zero, enabled precise calculations for architectural design, calendrical cycles, trade, and tribute systems. Mathematical knowledge was transmitted through apprenticeship and household teaching, ensuring that practical numeracy remained widespread even after the collapse of elite-sponsored scribal schools in the South. Mathematics was applied to everyday problems, such as measuring fields, allocating water, or calculating the timing of rituals, while also supporting monumental construction, trade, and ceremonial scheduling. Knowledge of numeracy was therefore both practical and intellectual, linking everyday survival to broader cosmological understanding. Writing and literacy continued to be significant in northern cities, though in adapted forms. Monumental inscriptions became less frequent, but codices, pottery markings, murals, and graffiti preserved essential historical, religious, and astronomical knowledge. Scribes were responsible for recording genealogies, ritual events, and astronomical observations, often collaborating with priests and rulers to ensure that critical information was maintained. Literacy also had social and political functions, reinforcing elite authority and integrating southern migrants into northern institutions. The Northern Postclassic adaptation of writing demonstrates both continuity with the classic period and innovation in response to demographic, political, and environmental changes. Education encompassed practical skills critical to survival. Farming techniques, water management, craft production, and construction were taught within households and neighborhoods. Apprentices learned masonry, weaving, pottery, and artistic production, ensuring both economic sustainability and cultural continuity. Training in civic and ritual tasks prepared individuals to participate in public ceremonies, festivals, and administrative activities. The integration of technical, economic, and ritual knowledge into daily instruction demonstrates the holistic nature of post-classic Maya education. Ritual knowledge was transmitted through a combination of observation, participation, and mentorship. Young members of elite and non-elite households learned ceremonial performance, calendrical calculation, astronomical observation, and proper etiquette from priests, elders, and community leaders. Household altars, public temples, and ceremonial plazas served as classrooms, linking practical experience with symbolic learning. Oral transmission supplemented written records, ensuring continuity across generations, even when monumental inscriptions were less frequent. Ritual education reinforced social cohesion, maintained cultural memory, and transmitted moral and ethical norms. Migration from southern lowlands contributed significantly to intellectual continuity. Southern scribes, artisans, and priests brought established knowledge of astronomy, architecture, glyphic writing, and ritual observance. Northern cities integrated this knowledge, adapting it to local environmental conditions, demographic realities, and political structures. The blending of Southern traditions with Northern innovations created dynamic educational practices that preserve core Maya intellectual traditions while fostering creativity and adaptation. Northern post-classic cities also maintained specialized institutions for training scribes, astronomers, and ritual specialists. Apprenticeships ensured that complex knowledge systems, such as lunar cycles, Venus tables, and sacred calendrical calculations, were transmitted with precision. Knowledge of cosmology, ritual law, and architectural measurement was linked to civic responsibility and spiritual authority, ensuring that intellectual traditions remained relevant and socially integrated. In conclusion, education, knowledge, and intellectual traditions were central to the resilience of Northern post-classic Maya cities. By combining formal instruction, apprenticeship, household teaching, and practical experience, Northern communities preserved astronomical, mathematical, linguistic, artistic, and ritual knowledge. Education reinforced social cohesion, maintained cultural identity, supported economic and civic systems, and enabled adaptation to environmental and political challenges. Knowledge was not an abstract ideal. It was a practical, integrative, and adaptive framework that sustained Maya civilization in the northern lowlands long after the collapse of southern capitals. In northern post-classic Maya cities, the transmission of knowledge was a cornerstone of social stability, cultural identity, and urban resilience. The collapse of southern lowland capitals brought migration, demographic shifts, and political realignment. Yet northern centers such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán successfully preserved intellectual traditions through a combination of formal instruction, apprenticeship, ritual participation, and practical engagement in daily life. Water management was critical in the northern lowlands, where natural sources were limited. Cenotes, natural sinkholes, and underground water reservoirs serve as primary sources of potable water for both domestic and ceremonial purposes. Cities constructed artificial reservoirs, cisterns, and canals to capture, store, and distribute rainwater efficiently. Urban planning incorporated water systems to serve residential neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, and marketplaces, demonstrating the interdependence of environmental adaptation, urban infrastructure, and social organization. The maintenance of water resources was overseen by civic and ritual authorities, reflecting the integration of practical and spiritual responsibility. Northern cities also developed sophisticated irrigation systems to support agriculture. Water from cenotes and reservoirs was channeled to terraces, raised fields, and gardens, maximizing crop yield and reducing vulnerability to drought. Labor was coordinated to maintain these systems, with communal participation ensuring that infrastructure functioned effectively. Irrigation technology was complemented by knowledge of soil types, rainfall patterns, and crop compatibility, illustrating the integration of scientific observation with practical and ritual knowledge. Successful water management reinforced urban stability, agricultural productivity, and social cohesion. Urban design reflected the importance of agricultural and water planning. Residential neighborhoods, marketplaces, and ceremonial centers were positioned to optimize access to water sources, storage facilities, and cultivated fields. Sakbiab connected these urban zones, allowing the movement of people, goods, and labor in a coordinated manner. Defensive and ceremonial structures were often located near water sources, ensuring both protection and symbolic sanctity. Education was not limited to elites. Practical, ritual, and artisanal knowledge permeated the community, allowing knowledge to serve both survival and cultural continuity. Practical education in agriculture, water management, and construction was vital for sustaining urban populations. Northern cities faced environmental challenges, including limited arable soil, seasonal drought, and dependence on cenotes for water. Farmers were trained in advanced techniques such as terrace farming, polyculture, irrigation, and soil preservation. Knowledge of planting schedules, crop rotation, and water allocation was transmitted orally and through hands-on participation. Children and young community members learned these skills by working alongside elders, linking practical labor to both survival and the continuity of traditional knowledge. Agricultural education was also coordinated with ritual and calendrical observances, highlighting the integration of intellectual, spiritual, and practical concerns. Artisan training represented another critical dimension of post-classic intellectual life. Pottery workshops, weaving guilds, and stone carving studios served as centers for apprenticeship and knowledge transmission. Apprentices learned material properties, production techniques, artistic design, and symbolic decoration. Ceramics, textiles, stone carvings, and metal ornaments often incorporated religious, political, and historical iconography, requiring artisans to master not only technical skills, but also the cultural and intellectual context of their work. Artisans produced functional items for domestic and commercial use, as well as ceremonial objects for ritual practice, trade, and elite display. Knowledge in these domains reinforced economic stability, social hierarchy, and cultural identity simultaneously. Astronomical and calendrical education was central to intellectual life. Priests and astronomers taught observation of celestial bodies, including the sun, moon, Venus, and major stars. Students learned to calculate the Sokin and Hab calendars, predict eclipses, and determine ceremonial timing. Observations informed agricultural practices, civic and ritual planning, and political decision-making. Architectural alignment, including pyramids, temples, and plazas, reflected this astronomical knowledge, serving as both functional observatories and ceremonial instruments. The integration of astronomy into urban design illustrates the holistic approach to intellectual training in northern post-classic cities, where science, ritual, and civic life were inseparable. Mathematics was applied in practical, ritual, and architectural contexts. The Maya number system, including the concept of zero, was taught to scribes, priests, and select students for calculations in construction, trade, ritual observance, and taxation. Apprentices and children learned arithmetic and measurement by participating in labor, trade, and ceremonial preparation, ensuring that quantitative knowledge was integrated into daily life. Mathematics reinforced both practical problem solving and the maintenance of intellectual continuity, bridging elite literacy and commoner participation in civic systems. Ritual knowledge was transmitted through mentorship and community participation. Young individuals learned ceremonial roles, altar preparation, sacrificial procedures, and proper offerings through observation and practice under the guidance of priests, elders, and family members. Public ceremonies, festivals, and household rituals functioned as educational sites, where both elite and commoner participants absorbed knowledge, social norms, and moral frameworks. This dual structure of instruction, formalized for elites and participatory for the community, ensured that intellectual traditions were broadly preserved while maintaining social hierarchy and ritual authority. Oral tradition played a critical role in intellectual continuity. Historical narratives, cosmological myths, genealogical knowledge, and moral lessons were recited and enacted in both household and public settings. Oral transmission compensated for the reduction in monumental inscriptions and codices, ensuring that essential knowledge survived. Migrants from southern cities contributed southern narratives, ritual practices, and artistic techniques, which were adapted to northern cultural, environmental, and political contexts. This dynamic process allowed post-classic Maya intellectual traditions to evolve without losing their foundational principles. Education was also deeply connected to social and civic responsibility. Students learned not only technical or ritual knowledge, but also civic duties, ethical behavior, and participation in collective labor. Understanding the interdependence of ritual, governance, and daily survival was central to training, reinforcing the social cohesion necessary for managing urban complexity. Knowledge was embedded in all aspects of life: agriculture, trade, architecture, ritual, and governance, creating an intellectual ecosystem in which education was inseparable from survival, community, and cultural continuity. In conclusion, education and the transmission of knowledge in northern post-classic Maya cities were holistic, integrative, and adaptive. By combining apprenticeship, household instruction, ritual participation, and formal learning, communities preserved astronomical, mathematical, linguistic, artisanal, and ritual expertise. Education reinforced social hierarchy, cultural continuity, and urban resilience while enabling adaptation to environmental, demographic, and political challenges. Knowledge in northern Maya cities was not an abstract ideal. It was a functional, dynamic system essential for survival, governance, and the preservation of Maya civilization in the post-collapse era. The intellectual traditions of northern post-classic Maya cities were intricately linked to both social cohesion and cultural continuity. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán relied on structured systems of knowledge transmission to maintain continuity with the Southern Maya heritage while adapting to local environmental and political realities. Intellectual traditions encompassed astronomy, mathematics, architecture, ritual practice, art, and history. These systems not only preserve accumulated wisdom, but also facilitated urban management, religious observance, trade, and community organization, demonstrating the interdependence of knowledge, governance, and daily life. Astronomical knowledge was a central pillar of post-classic intellectual practice. Priests, astronomers, and scribes trained students in celestial observation to track the movements of the sun, moon, Venus, and major stars. Celestial observations guided agricultural cycles, ritual scheduling, and urban planning. Temples, pyramids, and plazas were aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and planetary events, providing functional observatories that reinforced cosmological principles. Students and apprentices participated in ritual observation, learning to connect scientific measurement with ceremonial timing, agricultural decision-making, and political action. Astronomy was thus both a scientific and spiritual discipline, linking knowledge directly to survival and civic cohesion. Mathematical training was equally integrated into education. The Maya number system, including the concept of zero, was taught for practical calculations in architecture, trade, taxation, and ritual planning. Apprenticeships in calculation were conducted alongside craft production, architectural projects, and ceremonial preparations. Mathematics facilitated the construction of pyramids, palaces, and sakbiab, guided trade and resource distribution, and supported calendrical precision for ritual observances. Students learned to apply abstract mathematical concepts to real-world problems, demonstrating the functional utility of intellectual training in sustaining urban life. Ritual knowledge was central to social and intellectual life. Young members of elite and non-elite households learned ceremonial procedures, altar preparation, sacrificial protocols, and the symbolism of ritual objects. Public ceremonies, festivals, and household rituals functioned as both spiritual and educational sites. Apprentices observed and participated under the guidance of priests, elders, and experienced artisans, ensuring transmission of both technical and symbolic knowledge. Ritual education reinforced hierarchical social structures while embedding intellectual skills in everyday life, bridging spiritual and practical understanding. Artistic and architectural instruction was a critical aspect of intellectual training. Apprentices and young artisans were taught masonry, stone carving, pottery, weaving, and mural painting. These skills combined technical mastery with an understanding of religious and political symbolism. Ceramics and textiles conveyed iconography that reinforced social hierarchy, ritual authority, and cosmological knowledge. Architectural projects such as pyramids, palaces, and ceremonial platforms required mathematical precision, understanding of materials, and alignment with celestial phenomena, demonstrating the integrated nature of artistic, technical, and intellectual education. Oral tradition played a vital role in maintaining historical memory and intellectual continuity. Stories, genealogies, cosmological narratives, and moral instruction were recited and enacted within households and during public ceremonies. Southern migrants contributed knowledge, ritual practices, and literary traditions, which northern cities adapted to local contexts. Oral transmission ensured that critical intellectual, cultural, and moral frameworks persisted even when monumental inscriptions or codices were less prevalent. Knowledge was therefore dynamic, evolving with demographic shifts while preserving essential traditions. Education and apprenticeship extended to civic, military, and economic knowledge. Young members of the community learned practical governance, trade management, and resource allocation through participation in household and communal activities. Military training, craft production, and market engagement were interwoven with intellectual instruction, creating a holistic educational environment in which practical and symbolic knowledge were inseparable. Northern Maya intellectual traditions emphasized functional utility, social responsibility, and continuity of cultural identity. Resource management and environmental knowledge were also central components of education. Understanding water systems, agricultural cycles, soil fertility, and forest ecology was critical for urban sustainability. Apprenticeship in these fields allowed younger generations to learn both practical skills and the underlying intellectual frameworks that connected environment, ritual, and governance. Knowledge of cenote maintenance, terrace farming, and crop rotation was transmitted alongside ritual significance, demonstrating the integration of science, spirituality, and civic responsibility in education. In conclusion, the education and intellectual traditions of Northern Postclassic Maya cities were sophisticated, integrative, and adaptive. By transmitting knowledge across generations through apprenticeship, household instruction, ritual participation, and practical engagement, Northern cities preserved astronomy, mathematics, writing, art, architecture, and environmental science. These intellectual traditions reinforced social cohesion, cultural continuity, economic management, and ritual observance, enabling Northern Maya civilization to thrive long after the collapse of southern lowland centers. Knowledge was simultaneously practical, spiritual, and symbolic, forming the backbone of Northern Maya society and ensuring resilience, innovation, and identity in the post-classic period. Migration and population movement were central dynamics in Northern Postclassic Maya society, profoundly shaping urban development, social organization, and cultural continuity. The collapse of southern lowland cities, including Tikal, Copan, Caracol, and Palenque, during the Terminal Classic period, c. 800 to 900 CE, prompted large-scale migrations northward, resulting in demographic transformation and the consolidation of power in northern cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán. These migrations brought not only people, but also skilled artisans, priests, scribes, and political leaders, creating a fusion of southern and northern traditions that revitalized northern urban centers while preserving aspects of Maya intellectual, ritual, and artistic heritage. Northern cities became cultural magnets for displaced populations, offering secure access to cenotes, arable land, and trade networks. Migration was both voluntary and strategic. Southern elites sought to maintain political influence, religious authority, and social networks in new urban centers, while commoners relocated to ensure survival, access to markets, and protection under northern governance structures. Archaeological evidence, including southern-style ceramics, glyphic motifs, and architectural features, demonstrates the movement of skilled artisans and the transplantation of cultural practices. Southern migrants introduced architectural techniques such as corbel vaulting, masonry methods, and ceremonial iconography, while northern innovations included the Puke-style colonnaded halls and Toltec-influenced iconography, creating a blended urban culture. Population growth resulting from migration necessitated changes in urban planning and resource management. Cities expanded to accommodate new residents, often constructing additional neighborhoods, terraces, and water management systems. Sakbiab, elevated stone causeways, connected residential clusters with ceremonial centers, marketplaces, and agricultural fields, ensuring logistical efficiency and maintaining civic cohesion. Neighborhoods were organized around kinship networks, artisanal guilds, and social strata, allowing both migrants and established residents to integrate into a functioning urban fabric. Ceremonial and public spaces were adapted to accommodate increased population, providing venues for festivals, rituals, and communal labor while reinforcing social hierarchies and civic identity. Migration also reshaped labor and artisanal production. Skilled southern migrants brought expertise in pottery, weaving, stone carving, mural painting, and scribal practices. These artisans trained apprentices, contributing to the transmission of knowledge and the adaptation of southern techniques to northern conditions. Pottery workshops, textile guilds, and construction crews expanded to meet the demands of growing urban populations and ceremonial obligations. Luxury goods, ritual paraphernalia, and trade commodities produced by these artisans reinforced social status, supported elite authority, and maintained long-distance trade networks connecting northern cities to coastal and inland regions. Religious practice and ritual observance were influenced by migration as well. Southern priests and ritual specialists brought knowledge of calendrical calculation, astronomical observation, ceremonial performance, and sacrificial protocols. Northern cities integrated these southern practices with local spiritual traditions, creating hybrid ritual forms that maintain continuity with southern cosmology while reflecting regional adaptation. Festivals, temple alignments, and ceremonial processions incorporated both northern innovations and southern heritage, reinforcing social cohesion among diverse populations. Household altars, domestic rituals, and apprenticeship programs ensured that spiritual and ritual knowledge was transmitted across generations, preserving a sense of identity and continuity in rapidly changing urban contexts. trade and economic networks were also impacted by migration. Northern cities absorbed southern merchants, traders, and specialists who contributed to long-distance exchange networks supplying obsidian, jade, copper, salt, textiles, and ceremonial goods. Control over trade routes and marketplaces became increasingly important as northern cities expanded, reinforcing political legitimacy and enabling elites to maintain influence over both local and regional economies. Markets served as spaces for integration, allowing migrants and established residents to participate in economic, social, and ritual life. The combination of skilled labor, trade networks, and resource management enabled northern cities to flourish despite environmental and demographic challenges. Demographically, migration transformed the social composition of northern cities. Southern elites often maintained political authority and religious leadership, while northern residents and migrants collectively participated in labor, ritual, and civic life. Intermarriage between northern and southern families reinforced alliances and integrated knowledge systems. Neighborhood organization reflected a balance of continuity and adaptation, preserving social networks, kinship ties, and artisanal specialization while accommodating new arrivals. Population density increased, requiring careful management of water, food, and infrastructure. Cenotes, reservoirs, terraced fields, and granaries were expanded and maintained to support growing communities. Migration also influenced military and defensive strategies. Northern cities, aware of potential conflicts and resource competition, constructed fortifications, watchtowers, and controlled access points along Sakbiab and trade routes. Southern migrants often contributed military expertise, introducing strategies and training methods developed in southern capitals. Standing warrior classes and elite military officers coordinated urban defense, ensuring protection for both indigenous residents and migrant populations. Control of resources, trade routes, and strategic urban locations reinforced political authority and social cohesion, enabling northern Maya cities to remain resilient in a dynamic and sometimes volatile landscape. In summary, migration and demographic change were defining features of post-classic northern Maya society. The influx of southern refugees brought expertise, cultural knowledge, ritual practices, and artisanal skill that revitalized northern cities. Population growth necessitated urban expansion, improved resource management, and adaptation of civic and ceremonial spaces. Integration of migrants into social, economic, and ritual life ensured continuity of cultural traditions while fostering innovation and adaptation. Migration was not merely a survival mechanism. It was a transformative force that strengthened northern Maya civilization, enabling cities to thrive, maintain identity, and preserve intellectual and artistic traditions in the post-classic period. This integration of urban layout, resource management, and ceremonial practice highlights the holistic approach to environmental adaptation in post-classic northern Maya cities. Ritual and agricultural practice were deeply intertwined. Farmers and civic leaders observed ritual calendars to determine planting and harvesting schedules. Ceremonial offerings, including food, figurines, and jade, were made to deities associated with rain, fertility, and agricultural productivity, such as Chak, the rain god. Public ceremonies and household rituals reinforced the spiritual and social significance of agricultural success, connecting food production to cosmology, elite authority, and communal cohesion. The integration of ritual and agriculture ensured that environmental knowledge and cultural values were transmitted across generations. Migration influenced agricultural and water management practices. Southern refugees introduced southern farming techniques, water management strategies, and ritual practices that were adapted to the northern environment. The fusion of southern and northern methods enhanced efficiency, productivity, and resilience. Agricultural specialists, priests, and civic officials collaborated to implement these practices, ensuring that both migrants and established residents contributed to the maintenance of essential resources and the continuation of cultural and ritual traditions. Trade, military strategy, and agriculture were closely linked. Control over fertile lands, irrigation infrastructure, and cenotes was essential for economic stability and political authority. Fortified agricultural zones, strategically placed granaries, and controlled water sources ensured that food and resources could be defended against rival cities or competing groups. Migration and population shifts in northern post-classic Maya cities had profound effects on social structures, urban organization, and cultural identity. The influx of southern refugees following the collapse of southern lowland capitals reshaped northern urban centers, creating complex networks of kinship, artisan guilds, and civic neighborhoods. Northern cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán experienced population growth that required strategic planning in housing, water management, agriculture, and ceremonial spaces. These demographic changes forced northern authorities to adapt governance, resource allocation, and ritual organization to accommodate new residents while maintaining social cohesion and cultural continuity. Southern migrants brought specialized knowledge in architecture, ritual, astronomy, craft production, and governance, which northern cities integrated into their urban and social systems. Artisans from Tikal, Copán, and other southern centers contributed masonry techniques, corbel vaulted construction, and intricate stone carving. Priests and scribes transmitted astronomical and calendrical expertise, facilitating accurate prediction of solstices, equinoxes, and Venus cycles, which guided both ceremonial scheduling and agricultural planning. This transfer of knowledge allowed northern cities to preserve southern intellectual traditions while adapting them to local environmental and political contexts. Migration, therefore, created a fusion of skills, ideas, and cultural practices that strengthened northern cities both practically and symbolically. Urban planning evolved in response to population movement. Residential compounds expanded to accommodate new families, while neighborhoods were organized to balance security, resource access, and communal labor. Sakbiab, elevated stone causeways, connected neighborhoods to ceremonial centers, marketplaces, and agricultural fields, facilitating trade, ritual processions, and administrative oversight. Larger plazas were constructed or repurposed to host increased population during festivals, public ceremonies, and market days. Civic and ceremonial architecture reflected both Southern stylistic influences and local innovations, demonstrating an adaptive approach to urban design that integrated new residents into existing social and ritual systems. Population growth also impacted resource management. Northern cities relied on careful management of water from cenotes and reservoirs, agricultural production from raised fields and terraces, and sustainable exploitation of forests for construction, firewood, and medicinal plants. Granaries, storage pits, and community reserves were expanded to ensure adequate supplies during droughts or seasonal shortages. Southern migrants often brought expertise in agricultural management, water systems, and food preservation, enhancing the efficiency and resilience of northern cities. This integration of environmental knowledge ensured that larger populations could be supported sustainably while maintaining social and ritual obligations. Migration reshaped labor and artisanal production as well. Skilled southern craftspeople taught northern apprentices pottery, weaving, stone carving, and mural painting. Production of ceremonial objects, luxury goods, and trade commodities increased to meet the demands of growing urban populations and expanded ritual calendars. Trade networks connected northern cities to coastal ports and interior regions, facilitating the movement of obsidian, jade, copper, salt, and textiles. Markets acted as both economic and social hubs, integrating migrants into urban economies and supporting long-distance commerce. Control over strategic resources, marketplaces, and trade hubs reinforced political legitimacy and ensured that northern cities could respond effectively to both internal and external threats. Migration thus strengthened northern military, civic, and social structures. In conclusion, migration and demographic change were pivotal in shaping post-classic northern Maya cities. Southern refugees contributed expertise, cultural knowledge, and labor that revitalized northern urban centers. Population growth necessitated urban expansion, resource management, labor organization, and ceremonial adaptation. The integration of migrants into civic, economic, and ritual life ensured cultural continuity, social cohesion, and resilience. Migration was both a response to Southern collapse and a transformative force that allowed Northern Maya civilization to flourish, preserve intellectual traditions, and maintain identity in the post-classic period. The demographic transformations caused by migration had long-lasting effects on the social, political, and cultural fabric of northern post-classic Maya cities. The influx of southern refugees following the collapse of the southern lowlands created a hybrid urban society in which southern and northern traditions coexisted, intermingled, and were sometimes transformed to meet new environmental and political realities. This fusion influenced the organization of neighborhoods, labor structures, ritual practices, trade networks, and governance systems. Understanding these changes is crucial to comprehending how northern cities like Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán achieve resilience and cultural continuity despite regional instability and ecological challenges. Southern migrants brought specialized knowledge and skills that were critical to urban development. Architects, masons, and artisans introduced masonry techniques, core-belled vault construction, and stone carving methods, which northern builders adapted to local limestone resources, climatic conditions, and urban layouts. Pottery, weaving, and mural painting traditions were also transplanted, blending with local styles to create hybrid artistic forms. Priests and scribes transferred knowledge of astronomy, calendrical calculation, and ritual performance, ensuring that religious and ceremonial traditions were maintained. This cultural and intellectual integration strengthened the northern city's social cohesion by providing a shared framework of knowledge and ritual that linked migrants and local residents. Population growth resulting from migration required extensive urban planning and resource coordination. Residential compounds were expanded or newly constructed to accommodate incoming families, often organized around kinship, craft guilds, or social hierarchy. Sakbiab connected neighborhoods, ceremonial plazas, markets, and agricultural fields, enabling both movement and communication across growing urban spaces. Water management systems, including reservoirs, cisterns, and access to cenotes, were expanded to meet increased demand, while granaries and storage pits were used to ensure food security. Civic, ritual, and residential planning were closely interlinked, demonstrating that demographic changes influenced all aspects of urban life. Economic adaptation was essential in the context of population growth. Markets became hubs for trade, artisanal production, and social interaction, integrating southern migrants into northern economic networks. Commodities included food, textiles, pottery, luxury goods, and ritual paraphernalia. Trade networks extended to coastal ports, highland obsidian sources, and inland agricultural regions, ensuring that northern cities could access both practical and prestige goods. Artisans and traders from southern regions contributed specialized skills, enhancing productivity, facilitating trade, and supporting urban prosperity. Economic integration provided both material sustenance and social cohesion, reinforcing alliances and civic identity. Religious and ritual practices were deeply affected by migration. Southern priests and ritual specialists introduced new ceremonial techniques, astronomical observations, and calendrical knowledge, which northern communities blended with local traditions. Festivals, ball games, and public ceremonies were adapted to include southern innovations, creating hybridized rituals that reinforced social cohesion and civic identity. Household rituals ensured that religious education extended beyond elite circles, allowing both migrant and local families to participate in spiritual life. This comprehensive approach to ritual practice helped maintain cultural memory, moral frameworks, and social hierarchy amid demographic changes. Migration also influenced social stratification and political dynamics. Southern elites often retained positions of authority, integrating into northern councils, priesthoods, and ruling structures. Intermarriage between northern and southern families reinforced alliances, transmitted knowledge, and integrated diverse populations. Neighborhood organization reflected these demographic realities, with kinship networks, artisanal guilds, and ceremonial responsibilities creating a cohesive urban society. The result was a multi-layered social structure that balanced elite authority, communal labor, and migration integration. Military organization adapted to demographic change as well. Northern cities utilized Southern migrants' knowledge of tactical organization, weaponry, and military strategy to enhance urban defense. Fortifications, watchtowers, and controlled access points along Sac-Biab and trade routes were essential to protecting both native and migrant populations. Control over key resources, markets, and agricultural areas was reinforced through military oversight, ensuring social stability and continuity of elite authority. Migration, therefore, strengthened the military and defensive capabilities of northern post-classic cities. Demographic integration also promoted cultural innovation. Southern knowledge merged with northern traditions to create distinctive architectural styles, artistic motifs, and ritual practices. Hybrid forms of Puke-style architecture, Toltec-influenced iconography, and Southern-influenced ceramics demonstrate the creative adaptation that resulted from demographic mixing. Social, economic, and ritual systems were modified to accommodate increased population density and diversity, allowing northern cities to remain resilient while preserving core elements of Maya identity. In conclusion, migration and demographic change were transformative forces in northern post-classic Maya society. Southern refugees revitalized northern urban centers, contributing skills, knowledge, and cultural heritage. Population growth necessitated urban expansion, enhanced resource management, and social integration. Hybridized cultural practices emerged, blending southern and northern traditions, while markets, neighborhoods, and ritual spaces facilitated economic, social, and ceremonial cohesion. Migration was both a response to southern collapse and a mechanism for renewal, ensuring that northern Maya cities could sustain identity, knowledge, and resilience in the post-classic period. Warfare and military strategy were central to the political, social, and economic organization of northern post-classic Maya cities. Following the collapse of southern lowland centers, northern cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán became hubs of regional power, where control over trade networks, agricultural land, and ceremonial spaces often depended on the effective organization of military forces. Unlike the classic period, when southern cities relied heavily on dynastic authority and ritualized conflict, post-classic northern warfare emphasized strategic planning, professionalized military structures, and tactical adaptability. Understanding warfare in northern cities provides critical insight into how these urban centers maintained political stability, economic control, and social cohesion amid environmental and demographic pressures. Northern post-classic cities maintained standing warrior classes, often organized under a hierarchical system of captains, elite warriors, and ceremonial officers. These professional forces were trained in the use of weapons such as atlatls, spears, obsidian-edged swords, and shields. Training began in youth, often integrated with civic, ritual, and artisanal education, so that military skill was inseparable from social and ceremonial life. Warriors were responsible not only for defending urban centers and trade routes, but also for enforcing elite authority, protecting resources, and participating in ritualized ceremonies that reinforce the connection between martial prowess and political legitimacy. Fortifications and urban design were central to military strategy. Northern cities employed defensive architecture, such as walls, elevated terraces, watchtowers, and controlled entry points to secure critical urban areas. Sakbiab, elevated stone causeways connecting neighborhoods, markets, and ceremonial centers, were often monitored and reinforced to prevent incursion. These fortifications were strategically integrated with observation points overlooking cenotes, agricultural fields, and trade corridors, allowing early detection of threats and rapid mobilization of forces. Archaeological evidence shows that defensive structures were maintained in coordination with civic and ritual responsibilities, demonstrating that military preparedness was a collective, citywide priority. Alliances and coalition building were critical components of post-classic military strategy. Cities frequently formed partnerships to control trade routes, secure agricultural territories, and maintain regional influence. Diplomatic marriages, ceremonial participation, and joint defense pacts strengthened these alliances. Such networks were fluid and could shift rapidly in response to environmental pressures, resource scarcity, or political disputes. Military cooperation extended beyond immediate city boundaries, linking northern cities to coastal regions and inland trade networks, ensuring economic stability while enhancing strategic defense. Offensive operations were carefully calculated. Raids targeted rival settlements, agricultural fields, or trade hubs, rather than indiscriminate destruction, preserving urban functionality while demonstrating military strength. Captured prisoners could be used for ritual sacrifice, servitude, or integration into elite households, linking warfare to political authority and ceremonial legitimacy. Archaeological evidence, including weapon caches, charred outposts, and fortified perimeters, demonstrates the tactical sophistication of post-classic campaigns. Warfare was therefore not purely destructive. It served to consolidate power, protect resources, and reinforce social hierarchy. Markets and trade routes were closely tied to military planning. Control of strategic corridors ensured safe passage of commodities such as salt, jade, obsidian, copper, and textiles, which were critical for both ritual and economic purposes. Cities that failed to secure these routes risked material scarcity, diminished political legitimacy, and vulnerability to rival forces. Fortified checkpoints and controlled access along trade causeways illustrate how military, economic, and political priorities were integrated into a coherent urban strategy. Ritual and military life were deeply intertwined. Ceremonial observances, ball games, and sacrifices often commemorated victories, legitimized elite authority, and reinforced social cohesion. Warriors participated in these rituals, linking martial success with spiritual sanction and civic identity. Religious ideology justified military action, integrating warfare into the broader cosmological framework of northern Maya society. Public ceremonies served to both display martial power and reinforce societal norms, ensuring that military engagement supported rather than undermined urban stability. Education and warfare was closely connected to broader civic and intellectual life. Young men trained under experienced warriors, learning strategy, weapon use, and leadership. This education was integrated with instruction in astronomy, ritual observance, and civic responsibility, ensuring that military skill reinforced social and spiritual understanding. Tactical training, combined with practical experience in fortification maintenance and neighborhood defense, created a professionalized military capable of protecting urban centers and regional interests. In conclusion, warfare in northern post-classic Maya cities was multidimensional, combining professionalized forces, strategic fortifications, alliances, resource control, and ritualized authority. Military preparedness ensured the protection of trade networks, agricultural production, and urban populations while reinforcing political legitimacy and social cohesion. Northern Maya cities used warfare not only as a tool for defense or conquest, but also as an instrument of governance, economic regulation, and cultural continuity. The integration of strategy, ritual, and civic planning allowed these cities to thrive in a period of demographic change, migration, and environmental uncertainty, demonstrating the adaptability and resilience of post-classic Maya society. Northern cities also shaped regional politics and trade long after their decline. Former urban centers continued to influence smaller settlements through cultural memory, economic connections, and ritual prestige. Elite lineages maintained knowledge and influence, integrating themselves into emerging political structures and sustaining aspects of governance and ceremonial practice. Migration from the north to other regions carried both material culture and intellectual traditions, spreading post-classic innovations throughout the Maya world. The impact of northern cities extended beyond their immediate urban footprint, shaping regional identity, technological practices, and cultural continuity. In conclusion, the decline of the northern post-classic Maya civilization was the result of multiple interacting factors, including environmental stress, political instability, economic disruption, and conflict. However, even as urban centers waned, their intellectual, artistic, architectural, and ritual contributions endured. Northern post-classic cities demonstrated remarkable adaptability and innovation during their period of flourishing, and their legacy persisted through subsequent generations, influencing later Mesoamerican societies and preserving the cultural memory of the Maya. The northern post-classic Maya civilization exemplifies both the fragility and resilience of urban societies in the face of environmental and social challenges. The final centuries of the northern post-classic Maya civilization were marked by a combination of social, environmental, and political pressures that accelerated urban decline, yet the city's cultural and intellectual legacy persisted. By the late 13th and 14th centuries, Mayapán had emerged as the dominant northern center, but its consolidation of power also revealed the fragility of northern political structures. Mayapán maintained a confederation of noble lineages and military alliances that allowed for temporary stability, but internal rivalries, competition over agricultural and water resources, and pressures from regional trade networks created vulnerabilities that ultimately contributed to the city's collapse. The trajectory of decline illustrates the interconnectedness of environmental adaptation, political authority, and social cohesion in northern post-classic Maya cities. Environmental stress played a persistent role in the decline. The northern Yucatan Peninsula was characterized by semi-arid conditions and variable rainfall. Agricultural productivity depended on terraces, raised fields, and irrigation systems, but repeated droughts or irregular precipitation placed increasing pressure on these systems. Cenotes, reservoirs, and cisterns, which had supported growing populations for centuries, required consistent maintenance. When political instability disrupted labor coordination or social cohesion, water infrastructure and agricultural systems became vulnerable. Crop failures and food shortages would have weakened urban stability, undermined elite authority, and contributed to social unrest, illustrating the delicate balance between environmental adaptation and political resilience. Political fragmentation further undermined northern cities. Rivalries among noble lineages and competing factions within Mayapán eroded centralized control. Leadership disputes often escalated into violent conflict, weakening urban cohesion and disrupting both trade and resource management. Formerly effective alliances designed to protect trade routes, agricultural territories, and ceremonial prestige became increasingly brittle. The decline of political oversight compromised the organization of labor for both agricultural and water management tasks, accelerating the deterioration of infrastructure and contributing to the gradual depopulation of urban centers. Social unrest, factional warfare, and elite competition were therefore critical drivers of decline alongside environmental stress. Trade networks, once a source of prosperity and regional influence, also contributed to vulnerability. Northern cities depended on access to obsidian, jade, copper, salt, and exotic goods to sustain both ritual and economic life. Competition for control of trade routes created conflict between neighboring cities and within confederations. Disruptions to long-distance trade diminished economic surplus, reduced the production of ceremonial goods, and weakened the legitimacy of elites who relied on these networks for wealth and prestige. Markets, which had been hubs of both economic exchange and social integration, likely experienced reduced activity, further undermining civic cohesion and contributing to the erosion of urban stability. Military pressures intensified the challenges of the late post-classic period. Conflicts over resources, territory, and political influence disrupted agricultural production and water management, diverted labor from essential urban maintenance, and strained social networks. Defensive fortifications, watchtowers, and urban walls were still employed, but repeated conflict reduced the efficacy of these systems. Northern cities faced both internal conflict and external threats, including raiding parties or rival confederations, which placed additional burdens on already stressed populations. Warfare, once a tool of social cohesion and political legitimacy, increasingly became a destabilizing factor, accelerating the decline of civic authority and infrastructure. Despite the decline, northern post-classic cities preserved significant intellectual and cultural traditions. Astronomical knowledge, calendrical calculation, architectural techniques, and ritual practices continued to be transmitted through household altars, apprenticeship, and public ceremonies. Artisanal production, including pottery, textiles, murals, and stone carving, persisted even as urban centers contracted. Southern migrants who had contributed expertise in construction, ritual, and astronomy continued to influence local practices, preserving elements of Southern Maya culture while fostering hybrid forms that were unique to the Northern Postclassic. This cultural continuity illustrates the resilience of intellectual traditions even in times of demographic and political stress. Religious practices continued to anchor community life, maintaining spiritual continuity despite declining urban organization. Temples, ceremonial plazas, and household altars remained focal points for ritual activity. Ball games, offerings, and sacrificial rites preserve cosmological understanding and reinforce social norms. Even in smaller settlements or partially depopulated urban areas, ritual observance allowed communities to retain cultural memory, transmit moral and ethical frameworks, and sustain a sense of identity tied to post-classic Maya civilization. The persistence of religious knowledge provided stability and continuity, even as cities experienced depopulation and political fragmentation. The legacy of Northern Postclassic cities extends beyond their immediate decline. Architectural innovations, including Uxmal masonry, colonnaded halls, pyramids, and ceremonial plazas, influenced subsequent urban design across Mesoamerica. Artisanal techniques, iconography, and ritual symbolism were preserved and adapted by later generations, contributing to the ongoing evolution of Maya culture. Intellectual achievements in astronomy, mathematics, and calendrics continue to inform regional knowledge systems, demonstrating the enduring impact of post-classic innovation. The synthesis of Southern and Northern traditions created a cultural foundation that persisted well into the colonial period and beyond. In conclusion, the decline of Northern Postclassic Maya cities was driven by a combination of environmental stress, political fragmentation, economic disruption, and warfare. While these factors undermined urban cohesion and infrastructure, the intellectual, artistic, and ritual legacy of the post-classic period persisted. Knowledge systems, architectural innovations, and cultural practices were transmitted across generations and influenced subsequent societies, ensuring that Northern Maya civilization left an enduring imprint on Mesoamerican history. The post-classic northern cities exemplify both the fragility of urban centers under stress and the resilience of cultural and intellectual traditions over time. The final segment in understanding the decline and enduring legacy of the Northern Postclassic Maya Civilization centers on the ways in which cultural memory, intellectual achievements, and artistic innovation persisted even after urban centers experienced depopulation and political fragmentation. While cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán ultimately fell from their heights of centralized authority, the knowledge, practices, and material culture developed during the post-classic period continued to shape the Maya world for centuries. This enduring legacy underscores the resilience of cultural systems, even in the face of environmental stress, social upheaval, and political collapse. One of the most important aspects of this legacy was the preservation of intellectual knowledge. Astronomy, calendrical systems, and mathematics, which have been central to the organization of civic, ritual, and agricultural life, continue to inform practices in smaller settlements and rural communities. Priests, scribes, and learned elites transmitted this knowledge orally and through apprenticeships, ensuring that the Tzolk'in and Hab calendars, Venus tables, eclipse predictions, and ritual timing were maintained. Even in the absence of large urban centers, Northern Maya intellectual traditions survived, influencing subsequent generations and serving as a link between the post-classic and the early colonial periods. Artistic traditions also persisted beyond the decline of northern cities. Pottery, textiles, stone carvings, and murals remained significant forms of cultural expression. Techniques developed in northern cities, including intricate puke masonry, geometric friezes, and Toltec-influenced iconography, continued to inspire artisans and communities in surrounding regions. Iconographic motifs, ceremonial imagery, and stylistic elements were transmitted through workshops, family lineages, and market exchange, allowing artistic innovation to survive even as urban populations dispersed. The continuation of artistic traditions provided a tangible connection to post-classic identity and reinforced communal and ritual memory in changing social landscapes. Religious and ceremonial practices remained central to cultural continuity. Despite declining city populations and fractured political authority, ritual life persisted in both household and communal contexts. Offerings to Chak, the rain god, and other deities continued to be made to ensure agricultural productivity, water availability, and communal well-being. Ball games, processions, and festivals maintained their symbolic and social roles, reinforcing community cohesion and moral frameworks. The persistence of ritual ensured that cultural identity was sustained even in smaller settlements or semi-urban communities, allowing the Northern Maya worldview to endure. Migration and demographic shifts also influenced the transmission of post-classic knowledge and practices. Southern refugees had initially contributed to Northern innovations, and subsequent migrations disseminated Northern traditions back into Southern lowlands and coastal regions. This two-way flow of people, skills, and ideas created a complex network of cultural transmission, ensuring that post-classic intellectual, artistic, and ritual achievements were not confined to declining urban centers. Through intermarriage, trade, and ceremonial participation, knowledge systems were embedded in everyday life, providing continuity even as political structures eroded. Northern post-classic cities left a tangible architectural legacy that influenced later urban planning. Structures such as pyramids, colonnaded halls, ceremonial plazas, and sakbiab remained functional and symbolic centers for surrounding communities. The precision of Northern architectural planning, including astronomical alignments and urban integration, continued to inform subsequent construction practices. Even abandoned or partially depopulated sites served as repositories of cultural memory, with stonework, facades, and urban layouts acting as educational and ritual reference points for later generations. Architectural continuity reinforced both identity and social cohesion across time and space. Trade, economy, and resource management also contributed to the enduring influence of northern cities. Knowledge of agricultural techniques, water management, artisan production, and market organization was transmitted to smaller settlements and emerging polities, allowing innovations from the northern post-classic period to persist beyond the decline of the major urban centers. Practices such as terrace farming, raised fields, irrigation engineering, and communal labor systems influenced the sustainability of rural and semi-urban communities, providing resilience against environmental challenges. The integration of ritual and practical knowledge ensured that these techniques were socially sanctioned and culturally meaningful. In summary, the decline of northern post-classic Maya cities was not an absolute collapse, but a transformation of urban, social, and cultural structures. Environmental stress, political fragmentation, economic disruption, and warfare contributed to urban depopulation and the weakening of centralized authority. Yet the intellectual, artistic, ritual, and architectural achievements of northern cities persisted through migration, oral transmission, apprenticeships, and localized ritual practices. These enduring legacies influenced subsequent generations, reinforced cultural identity, and preserved the continuity of Maya civilization long after the decline of urban centers. The northern post-classic Maya exemplify both the vulnerability and resilience of complex societies, demonstrating how cultural and intellectual achievements can outlast political and environmental collapse. And that brings us to the end of our journey through the northern post-classic Maya civilization. Today, we've explored everything from the rise of northern cities after the collapse of the southern lowlands, the ingenious agriculture and water management systems, trade networks and migrations, to the complex warfare, political structures, and rich intellectual and ritual life that define these remarkable people. We also saw how, despite decline and fragmentation, the Maya legacy endured through architecture, art, knowledge, and ritual practices that survived for centuries. The moral of the story? Human ingenuity, cultural resilience, and the ability to adapt to environmental and social challenges can sustain civilizations, even when political systems falter. The northern post-classic Maya teach us that knowledge, innovation, and community cohesion can leave a legacy that outlasts the rise and fall of cities. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more incredible tales from history, don't forget to subscribe to History Teller YT, hit the notification bell, and join us on our next adventure into the past. From ancient empires to unsolved mysteries, we have countless stories waiting to be uncovered. Thank you for listening, and we can't wait to bring you the next chapter of history. Military planning, urban organization, and environmental adaptation were thus integrated into a coherent system of resilience, allowing northern Maya cities to thrive despite environmental stress and regional instability. In conclusion, agriculture, water management, and environmental adaptation were critical to the survival and prosperity of northern post-classic Maya cities. Through terrace farming, raised fields, polyculture, irrigation systems, reservoirs, and cenotes, northern cities overcame ecological constraints and sustained dense populations. Integration of ritual observance, urban planning, migration knowledge, and military strategy ensured that agricultural and water management systems were efficient, resilient, and socially cohesive. These innovations allowed northern Maya cities to thrive, maintain cultural continuity, and preserve political and ritual authority long after the collapse of southern lowland capitals. Northern post-classic Maya cities relied on intricate water management systems to support urban growth, agricultural production, and ceremonial activities. The northern lowlands presented unique environmental challenges, including limited rainfall, seasonal droughts, and porous limestone bedrock that made natural water retention difficult. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán responded to these challenges through a combination of engineering, labor organization, and ritual oversight, creating sustainable systems that ensured both practical survival and spiritual continuity. The careful integration of water infrastructure into urban design exemplified the Maya ability to adapt to environmental constraints while reinforcing social cohesion and political authority. Cenotes were central to northern water management. These natural sinkholes provided a reliable source of fresh water for drinking, irrigation, and ritual purposes. The Maya developed infrastructure around cenotes, including platforms, steps, and ceremonial enclosures, highlighting the dual role of these sites as both utilitarian and sacred spaces. Ritual offerings, such as pottery, jade, figurines, and occasionally human remains, were deposited in cenotes to invoke divine favor for rain, crop fertility, and communal prosperity. The maintenance and ceremonial use of cenotes reinforced elite authority, as priests and civic leaders controlled access, oversaw offerings, and ensured both spiritual and practical benefits for the community. Artificial reservoirs, cisterns, and canal systems complemented cenotes by capturing and storing rainwater. These systems were carefully designed to maximize efficiency and mitigate the effects of drought. Reservoirs were often centrally located within cities to provide equitable access for neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, and marketplaces. Cisterns, typically associated with elite residences and communal facilities, stored water for domestic use, ritual cleansing, and food preparation. Canals and channels distributed water to agricultural terraces and raised fields, ensuring that crops could survive dry periods. Labor for construction and maintenance of these systems was coordinated across neighborhoods and social groups, demonstrating the integration of civic responsibility, social organization, and environmental management. Agricultural terraces and raised fields were key innovations that allowed northern Maya cities to cultivate crops efficiently in challenging terrain. Terracing reduced soil erosion, improved drainage, and created level surfaces suitable for planting. Raised fields elevated crops above flood-prone areas, enhanced soil fertility, and facilitated the management of water. Polyculture systems, which combine maize, beans, squash, chili, ramon nuts, and cassava, maintained soil fertility while providing a diverse and reliable food supply. Crop timing was carefully coordinated with the ritual calendar, linking agricultural production to ceremonial cycles and reinforcing the connection between cosmology, labor, and subsistence. Northern cities integrated water management and agriculture with urban planning. Neighborhoods, marketplaces, and ceremonial plazas were designed to ensure efficient distribution of water to homes, fields, and communal facilities. Sakbiab connected residential clusters to agricultural zones, reservoirs, and ceremonial centers, facilitating the movement of labor, goods, and ceremonial participants. Defensive considerations were incorporated into urban planning as well, with fortified neighborhoods and watchtowers protecting key water sources and agricultural areas from potential raids or conflicts. Urban infrastructure thus reflected a holistic approach to environmental adaptation, linking practical survival with civic organization, defense, and ritual observance. Migration influenced agricultural practices and water management strategies. Southern refugees brought knowledge of farming techniques, irrigation methods, and water storage systems, which northern cities adapted to local conditions. These migrants contributed expertise in terrace construction, raised fields, canal engineering, and crop rotation, enhancing the resilience and efficiency of northern agricultural production. Integration of southern knowledge also helped standardize labor organization, ritual observances, and ceremonial timing, ensuring continuity of cultural practices even as populations shifted. Trade and resource control were closely linked to agricultural and water management. Cities that successfully managed water and cultivated surplus crops could support larger populations, fund ceremonial projects, and maintain long-distance trade networks. Surplus production was critical for marketplaces, artisanal production, and elite consumption, reinforcing social hierarchy and economic stability. Control over water systems and productive agricultural land was also militarily significant, as access to these resources could be contested by rival cities or local factions. Military planning, agricultural efficiency, and urban design were therefore integrated into a comprehensive system of resilience. Ritual observance was inseparable from agricultural and water management practices. Planting, harvesting, and irrigation cycles were coordinated with ceremonial events, such as offerings to Chak, the rain deity, or communal festivals that marked cosmological transitions. Household rituals reinforced agricultural knowledge and ensured the intergenerational transmission of farming practices. Large-scale communal rituals, often involving public plazas and ceremonial platforms, linked labor, spiritual observance, and civic identity. The combination of ritual and practical management ensured both the sustainability of resources and the continuity of cultural memory. In conclusion, agriculture, water management, and environmental adaptation were essential to the survival and prosperity of northern post-classic Maya cities. Cenotes, reservoirs, cisterns, canals, terraces, and raised fields formed a complex, integrated system that supported dense populations, sustained trade, and reinforced civic and ritual structures. Migration, innovation, and ritual oversight enhanced the resilience of these systems, demonstrating the Northern Maya mastery of environmental adaptation. By linking practical engineering, labor coordination, and spiritual observance, post-classic cities maintained agricultural productivity, political authority, and social cohesion in a challenging environment. Northern post-classic Maya cities demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in adapting agriculture and water management to the challenges of the northern lowlands, ensuring the survival and prosperity of dense urban populations. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán relied on a combination of environmental knowledge, engineering skill, labor organization, and ritual practice to create resilient agricultural systems capable of sustaining social, political, and ceremonial life. These adaptive strategies were closely intertwined with urban planning, migration, trade, and military preparedness, reflecting the holistic integration of ecological, economic, and cultural priorities. Terracing, raised fields, and polyculture were central to northern agricultural strategies. Terraces reduced erosion, retained moisture, and created flat surfaces for planting on uneven terrain, while raised fields elevated crops above low-lying areas prone to seasonal flooding, improving soil fertility and drainage. Polyculture systems, combining maize, beans, squash, chili, Ramon nuts, and cassava, maximized yield, minimized soil depletion, and provided dietary diversity. Crop cycles were carefully coordinated with the soak-in and hob calendars, linking agricultural productivity with cosmology and ritual observance. Farmers and ritual specialists worked in tandem to ensure that planting and harvesting coincided with ceremonial events, reinforcing social cohesion and cultural continuity. Cenotes, reservoirs, cisterns, and canals were vital components of water management in the northern lowlands. Cenotes supplied potable water and ceremonial offerings, serving as focal points for both daily life and ritual observance. Reservoirs captured rainfall and provided storage for periods of drought, while cisterns ensured household access to water. Canals and channels distributed water to fields, terraces, and gardens, allowing irrigation to supplement natural rainfall. The construction and maintenance of these systems required coordinated labor, technical knowledge, and communal cooperation, highlighting the interdependence of environmental adaptation, civic organization, and social structure. Migration further influenced agricultural and water management practices. Southern refugees brought knowledge of terrace construction, raised fields, irrigation techniques, and agricultural rituals, which were integrated into northern systems. Southern farmers and engineers introduced strategy for soil enrichment, crop rotation, and water distribution, enhancing the productivity and sustainability of northern agricultural infrastructure. These innovations, combined with local environmental understanding, allowed northern cities to support growing populations while maintaining ecological balance and ritual observance. Urban planning was closely tied to agriculture and water management. Residential neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, marketplaces, and storage facilities were arranged to optimize access to water sources and cultivated land. Sac-Biab linked neighborhoods to fields and reservoirs, facilitating the movement of labor, trade goods, and ceremonial participants. Defensive structures, including walls and watchtowers, often protected key water sources and productive land, reflecting the integration of military preparedness, urban design, and resource management. These arrangements ensured both practical survival and social cohesion in expanding cities. Ritual observance was inseparable from agricultural and water management practices. Offerings to deities such as Chak, the rain god, and other fertility spirits were performed to ensure rainfall, protect crops, and maintain social harmony. Household altars and domestic rituals reinforced these practices, transmitting agricultural knowledge and spiritual responsibility across generations. Public ceremonies, often held in plazas and temples, celebrated the interconnectedness of humans, the cosmos, and the environment, reinforcing communal identity and moral obligations. The integration of ritual, labor, and environmental observation ensured that agriculture and water management were both practical and culturally meaningful. Economic considerations also shaped agricultural strategies. Surplus production enabled trade, supported artisans, and funded ceremonial events, reinforcing social hierarchy and political authority. Control of agricultural and water resources was closely linked to elite legitimacy and urban stability, as rulers and councils coordinated planting, irrigation, storage, and distribution. Fortified granaries, strategically positioned terraces, and protected irrigation infrastructure ensured food security while sustaining trade and ceremonial obligations. The combination of economic planning, environmental adaptation, and ritual oversight created a resilient and integrated system. Northern Maya cities demonstrated remarkable flexibility in responding to environmental variability, including droughts, seasonal floods, and soil depletion. Diversification of crops, irrigation innovation, reservoir storage, and adaptive urban planning allowed cities to withstand climatic and ecological stress. Civic and ritual coordination ensured that labor, resources, and knowledge were deployed efficiently, maintaining productivity and social stability. Migration and knowledge transfer from southern cities further enhanced the resilience and adaptability of northern agricultural systems. In conclusion, agriculture, water management, and environmental adaptation were central to the sustainability of northern post-classic Maya cities. Through the integration of terraces, raised fields, polyculture, reservoirs, canals, and ritual practice, northern urban centers overcame environmental challenges, supported growing populations, and maintained economic, political, and ceremonial stability. Migration, technological innovation, and civic oversight ensured the efficient use of resources and the continuity of cultural traditions. By embedding environmental knowledge into urban planning, ritual life, and social organization, northern Maya cities created a resilient system that allowed them to thrive long after the collapse of southern lowland capitals. The decline of the northern post-classic Maya civilization was a complex process shaped by environmental, political, economic, and social factors. Cities such as Chichén Itzá, Uxmal, Cobá, and Mayapán experienced centuries of growth and cultural flourishing. Yet the stability of these urban centers was ultimately undermined by a combination of internal and external pressures. Migration patterns, competition for resources, social unrest, and environmental stress contributed to the gradual weakening of urban cohesion. Despite this decline, the legacy of northern post-classic Maya cities persisted, influencing subsequent societies, preserving intellectual traditions, and leaving a rich archaeological and cultural record that continues to inform our understanding of Maya civilization. Environmental factors played a significant role in the decline of northern Maya cities. The northern lowlands were prone to periodic drought, seasonal rainfall variability, and soil depletion. Agricultural systems such as terraces, raised fields, and irrigation networks required constant maintenance and labor input. Climatic fluctuations, including extended dry periods, challenged the sustainability of these systems and placed stress on urban populations. Water management infrastructure, such as reservoirs, cisterns, and canals, could not always buffer against these environmental pressures. Crop failures would have immediate consequences, reducing food security, weakening economic stability, and increasing social tension. These environmental stresses, coupled with a growing population, made northern cities increasingly vulnerable to both internal conflict and external threats. Political instability also contributed to decline. Northern post-classic cities relied on elite councils, dynastic rulers, and religious authorities to maintain social order, regulate trade, and oversee labor. Internal competition among elite families, disputes over succession, and factional rivalries undermined centralized governance. Migration and integration of southern refugees created a diverse social landscape, which, while culturally enriching, introduced competing claims to authority and ritual legitimacy. Conflicts among elites and between urban centers over control of trade routes, cenotes, and agricultural land often escalated into localized warfare, further destabilizing political structures. The erosion of centralized authority weakened the capacity of cities to maintain infrastructure, coordinate labor, and manage resources effectively. Economic pressures intensified the vulnerability of northern cities. Trade networks, which had been essential for access to obsidian, jade, copper, salt, and textiles, became increasingly contested. Military competition over key trade corridors and agricultural territories disrupted the flow of goods, while declining productivity and environmental stress reduced surpluses available for elite consumption, ritual practice, and redistribution. Markets, which had served as both economic and social hubs, may have become less efficient as population pressures and political instability disrupted commercial networks. Artisan production, while still significant, could not fully compensate for the decline in agricultural output and trade income. Economic decline further eroded the social legitimacy of elites, undermining civic cohesion and reducing the capacity for collective action. Warfare and conflict exacerbated the decline. Northern cities engaged in defensive and offensive operations to protect resources, trade routes, and political authority. However, prolonged or intensified conflict placed additional strain on urban populations, labor systems, and infrastructure. Fortified neighborhoods, watchtowers, and sakbiab required continuous maintenance and manpower, while military mobilization diverted labor from agriculture, artisan production, and ritual construction. Repeated raids, sieges, or inter-city competition likely contributed to social unrest and population displacement. While warfare had previously reinforced elite authority and social cohesion, in times of economic and environmental stress, it became a destabilizing force. Ritual and religious life also underwent transformation during periods of decline. Ceremonial observances, ball games, and sacrificial rituals had long served to reinforce political legitimacy and communal cohesion. As social stress increased, participation in ritual life may have become inconsistent, and the capacity of elites to sanction ceremonial authority may have been diminished. Household and neighborhood rituals likely persisted, preserving cultural memory at the local level, but the scale and frequency of citywide ceremonies may have decreased. Religious adaptation, syncretism, and local innovation helped maintain spiritual continuity even as centralized ritual authority waned. Despite these challenges, Northern Postclassic Maya cities left a lasting legacy. Architectural innovations, such as Puke-style masonry, colonnaded halls, pyramids, and ceremonial plazas, influenced subsequent construction and provided a template for urban planning. Artistic and craft traditions, including pottery, textiles, murals, and stone carving, were transmitted to later communities and continued to inform Mesoamerican visual culture. Knowledge systems, particularly astronomy, mathematics, calendrics, and ritual practice, were preserved in codices, inscriptions, and oral traditions, ensuring continuity of intellectual heritage. The synthesis of Southern and Northern innovations that characterized post-classic culture became a defining feature of Maya identity for centuries to follow.